This young man was bestowed with the power of the divine blade. Therefore, nothing related to swordsmanship could challenge him. And of course, nothing in the world could escape the blade in Jin's hands. But the strange thing is, instead of engaging in battles, Jin works at a Japanese restaurant. And perhaps the reason he mastered the divine blade and works his butt off is to go all in on this game. It's just unclear why. When he logged in today, his phone screen went haywire, glitching like it was infected with a virus. Something strange happened. The frozen phone screen suddenly flashed an unusual light, unnoticed by anyone. The progress bar on Jin's screen reached 100%. Also unnoticed, he vanished without a trace. Jin vanished into the very game he loved. And what he said about it was nothing special to speak of, just a typical pay-to-win mobile game with the typical auto-hunting system. Jin's abandoned phone screen now displays the familiar touch to continue message. He remembers the game's characters with their alluring curves. Why did I even play this game? The character designs were too captivating. I got sucked in. The funny thing is, I blew a fortune on it. And even after playing for so long, now I'm not even a playable character. Not even a computer. The phone screen shows a mouse cursor repeatedly clicking on the game screen. Something unimaginable has happened. Jin became a character in that game. A character he completely owned. Jin stood before a door, lost in thought. My name is Gangzuma. At this moment, Jin, or rather, Gangzuma, bumped into a beautiful girl. With the quick reflexes of a swordsman, he immediately became alert. Thinking to himself, a girl. Zuma quickly checked on her. Are you alright? She immediately replied, yes. I'm sorry, he thought to himself. It's fortunate the guardian spirit's setting is in Korea. The place names are only slightly different, and the other characters are quite similar. While Roma wasn't paying attention, the subway station announcement echoed. Next station, Mapgo. He felt a sense of relief. Thanks to that, he could easily adapt, half-heartedly sweeping the access way with a broom. For a year, Jin had lived inside the game world. He'd even forgotten whether this was reality or a game. A life that he never experienced in his previous life. Until that day, perhaps a milestone was set. In Jin's ordinary life, it was one afternoon, with a brilliant red sunset casting over an apartment building. Jin's home. He's back. A woman's voice immediately rang out. Welcome back. The proud mother of the great swordsman, Kang Duma. She held up his academy acceptance letter. Jin's golden ticket. Look at this, honey, she boasted. Ignoring his reluctant reaction, his parents continued their lively chatter. After a while, they finally remembered their son. Of course, Duma. Tomorrow's the entrance ceremony, son. Have you prepared everything? He replied helplessly, yes, I'm getting ready. One of them responded, all right, off you go, son. Kim seemed to realize that his small dream of living in a normal family was shattered. He stared blankly at the acceptance letter and sighed. Mom and Dad are so happy tomorrow. I can't refuse. Kim was a little annoyed. I've asked many times if I could quit, but the answer is always the same. He noticed the picture of his family of 3 on the desk. So tired. Because of that bastard, King Zuma. Why did you have to get accepted into such a prestigious school? It all started like this. Kim recalled the conversation with his parents earlier. He had been scolded. Last year, your divine power awakened, so you participated in the test. Don't you remember the input? Of course. He couldn't believe his ears. Kim felt dizzy and his vision blurred as he thought. Before I acquired him, his divine power had already emerged, and he immediately passed the Wangjiam Academy's test. He felt like he'd been tricked. He couldn't help but mutter under his breath, calling him a genius. How could this bastard? In this game, divine power is a special ability that humans can wield. It's like the ultimate moves in a game. However, not everyone possesses divine power. Divine power is often passed down through genes, based on the presence or absence of divine power. Society is divided into 3 classes: the upper class, commoners, and the poor. Organizations were created to maintain the power of the classes, the elite being Wangjiam Academy. Although it was founded with the purpose of training heroes, for a long time it has been an exclusive cradle for families of the upper class. Recently, acceptance notices, especially for non-hero families, also known as special acceptances, were issued, and Kang Yona was accepted as one of those special students. But why are heroes so praised? The reason is obvious. Because of the rise of the Demon King, Kim couldn't help But think of those terrifying and dreadful monsters. He reminded himself once again, this isn't reality. A hero training environment to prepare for war. How would it be any different? But maybe it would feel like re-enlisting in the military. Thinking of this, a bored Kim called out, "Divine power." Immediately, the invincible divine power system appeared, and enduring his taunts. Status window. Looks strange. However, Jin's still a little curious. Let's see what invincible divine power Gangjima unlocked. After reading the information on the system window, anger flared within him. Why am I caught up in this? Every time I see it, I feel miserable. 30 seconds with a 12-hour cooldown? That's ridiculous. Jin's figured something out from the system. Alright, this is the divine power bestowed upon me when I possessed this body. The Sword God's Blessing. He muttered under his breath, Sword God's Blessing. And my name is Gangjima. No one would dare mess with me, right? Because the name Gangjima here means blood demon. This is a divine power I've never seen in the game before. Such a flowery name. Completely contradicts its simple power. Injured means it's over. Calling this thing a superpower is ridiculous. This is beyond imagination. But what's more annoying is the activation requirement. Jin struggles to read the lines on the screen. The length of the sword must be less than 30 centimeters. The width must be less than 5 centimeters. You can't rely on your assumptions for this. It's clearly the size of sashimi. Is it telling me to cut sashimi here? Information overload is giving Jin a headache. I don't know anymore. After all, life never goes as planned. He lazily wonders if he packed everything. Jin suddenly remembers, oh right, he forgot his equipment. He only remembers now, when he's using this character's weapon, that he remembers the money he burned on this game. Even the lowest E rank is worth millions of won. The average C rank is worth hundreds of millions. A rank and S rank items are treasures. Kim pondered, analyzing the situation. The tuition alone is ridiculously expensive. I don't want to spend money on things I'm forced to buy. It says required equipment. So if I don't bring anything, definitely make a bad first impression. I guess. He sighed, the frustration building inside him. But with my parents' expectations, I'll just go to Daiso. The first teacher I remember insisted I get a Japanese tsukiji sashimi knife, worth a fortune. He realized who he was thinking of and scoffed, suddenly remembering that old man. A master who never blamed his equipment. Time passed, and Kim arrived in the United States for freshman orientation. Lee Wonbium was in charge of inspecting the new students. When he saw Kim's weapon, he couldn't help but frown. Are these really your weapons? He looked at a set of sashimi knives, 30% off, on the table, casually letting out a sigh. Enrollment day is also equipment inspection day. And now, the inspection area was submerged in an eerie silence. Demon Lee Wonbium, obviously, was an instructor who took his job very seriously. Every year, the elite students would pull pranks. Discipline must be established from the very beginning. The thought barely finished when he slammed his hand on the table and roared. Do you think this is a joke? You think using these kitchen knives in the placement test is acceptable? Responding to this outburst was only Kim's ice-cold reply. These are my weapons. Hearing this, Lee Wonbium froze, stiff as a board. The boy's answer clearly infuriated him. This kid, interrupting the instructor. Tell me honestly, I'm a special student from an ordinary family. Tuition alone is a huge burden on my parents. So how could I burden them further with the cost of expensive weaponry? Lee Wonbian then noticed Kim's name tag. He paused, murmuring a special student name tag color. For students not from the upper class, tuition really is a burden. He pondered deeply. Someone connected to the academy, yet promoting educational equality. Truly shocking. Will prejudice and pressure make this student give up? So a 30% discount means... Kim continued, without pausing. His eyes flashed, a sharpness unbefitting a teenager. His words are sharp and cutting. Only amateurs blame their equipment. Even Lee Wonbium was blinded by the light from those golden eyes. A master never blames his tools. These aren't words a teenager should be saying. It's like this kid has already reached some kind of peak. The weight of these powerful words, an unyielding spirit, as if Lee Wonbium was moved to tears. No way. Ignoring the dreamy state Lee Wonbium was in, Kim impatiently urged the instructor to snap Lee Wonbium out of it. Hey, he shouted, trainee Kong Juma's weapon is approved. Hearing this, he put away his discounted sashimi, not forgetting to thank him. Thank you, instructor. This scene caught the eyes of the rich kids behind them. A young lady immediately spoke up sarcastically, mocking the student. Especially the bespectacled boy in the front chimed in. How can someone like that be here? Another one sneered. I can smell the stench of those special students. Listen to this annoying racket. Lee Wonbium immediately erupted in anger. Quiet down, new students. When the inspection is over, move quickly. He immediately asserted his dominance. Based on your actions, I could be an angel or a devil. Understood? Kim grumbled as he grabbed his bag and ran. Internally, I'm completely traumatized. In a corner of the school, Kim found a place to rest. He seemed utterly exhausted. I expected it to be like this, but experiencing it firsthand is still overwhelming. Kim dejectedly consoled himself. At least I got through the inspection, equipment fitting, and entrance ceremony. Just a placement test left. Speaking of which, he suddenly went silent and looked at the scene in front of him. But I already did it. This aristocratic school really reeks of money. This is the school I'll be attending for the next 3 years. Hero Training School, Hwa Jiang Academy. Kim observed the magnificent splendor of Hwa Jiang and exclaimed that it was completely different from the pictures. It's a place with all the amenities. To put in a slightly exaggerated way, it's like a miniature town. He chuckled with amusement. Impressive. This school is only for the upper class. Thinking about the past, having to drop out of school because of family circumstances, it feels like a dream. While Kim was contemplating life, the school's announcement speaker came on. The placement test is about to begin. Request. All students report to the training hall at 1 p.m. Hearing this, Gene rummaged through his bag, seemingly preoccupied. Has it started already? The entrance ceremony is over, but the placement test is more important. Kim confidently pulled out a sashimi knife. A test is a test. Let's get acquainted with it. He paused, realizing he hadn't used a knife in a while. Since arriving here, there hasn't been a need for it. He remembered the head chef who trained him in the real world. The old man would nag him every single day. Never let go of your knife. Always hold it, even while sleeping. Remember? Kim said arrogantly. Seems like I picked up a habit from that old geezer. 25 years, living by the blade. Did taking a year off dull my skills? He muttered, stroking the knife's handle, feeling that wonderful, familiar sensation. Got Kim a little more than excited. I thought you'd whip that blade out and want to test it out immediately. See if you could maybe slice a leaf in half as soon as it left the sheath. The moment the blade left its sheath, a jolt surged through Kim, leaving him numb. The system continuously announced. Weapon qualifies for activation. Activating Sword God's Blessing. After assessment, it immediately warned, your physique is too weak. Equipment level too low. Implementing suppression to initiate user synchronization. Kim was utterly shocked, unable to believe what just happened. Just drawing the blade activated a blessing. After thoroughly shaking the player, the system concluded with a very generic line. May the Lord's blessing be with you always. These words jolted Gene awake from his stupor. At that very moment, a powerful current surged from the knife into his body, causing him to cry out in pain. It's corroding. If this continues, I'll die. Gene thought desperately. His pupils dilated in agony. It wouldn't stop. Suddenly, a blinding light erupted. The world shattered like glass, broken into fragments. Gene, suspended in midair, watched in astonishment as a bizarre crimson space began to unfold. His eyes narrowed at the utterly strange phenomenon. What the? Jin's grip on the sashimi knife loosened. He stammered, what the hell is this? The knife clattered to the ground, but he was too stunned to care. Gene gazed at the world materializing before him. His astonishment was undeniable. In his dark eyes, there was immense doubt. Gene observed the magnificent scenery of the golden flower before him. Am I back again? The moment I let go of the knife, everything went back to normal. He clutched his incredibly heavy head and muttered, my whole body aches. Gene trembled with rage, thinking, I understand that divine power was activated. But God's blessing, what does it have to do with my pain? An adverse reaction? This pain is excruciating. Divine power only provides mild muscle pain relief after use. He looked closely at his trembling hands. If every activation is like this, Jin's heart was filled with frustration. Why could I use it right when I was in a state of utter panic? A rapid announcement blared from the loudspeakers. All students, report to the training hall immediately. Kim stared at the sashimi knife lying abandoned on the ground. But I guess I should pick it up. Can't just leave a sashimi knife on the floor. Maybe it only hurts the first time you activate it. pain beyond physical and mental comprehension. I still remember it clearly from earlier. He had to muster all his courage to bend down. It'll be fine once I pick it up. Right, Kim? He finally picked up the knife. He thought he'd be safe, no more unexpected damage. But the best laid plans often go awry. He once again experienced that incredibly stimulating sensation accompanied by intense screams. What the heck is this cage? At the training hall, a building resembling a super high-end version of ancient Rome. Strong, sturdy, yet reeking of wealth. Inside, groups of students were recounting and chatting animatedly. In one corner, 3 individuals were gathered. A slightly older man said with a chuckle. Yeah, the only chubby guy in the group chimed in. I have no idea what the entrance fee is either. Then, as if realizing something, he let out a cold snort. He turned and said to the newcomer, "Oh my, it must have been a tough journey getting here." His tone became a bit more respectful. "Greetings, Blade Peak Lord." The newcomer carried a precious 3-ton staff. It was none other than Zombie. The 7-star hero, Blade Peak Lord Zombie, Safiri von Bellum. The surrounding area immediately erupted in shouts. Descendant of Arnie Bellung, disciple of the founding hero of Follow, America, the chubby guy became flustered, scratching his head awkwardly. The strongest man, the older man quickly interjected, "Let's head back to our seats, shall we?" He has no choice but to obey. Yes, Zombie has remained silent since his arrival. Then, as if sensing something, he glances in a certain direction. The newcomer is 7-star hero Saint Media Boson, a beautiful and alluring woman. She greets Zombie. It's been a while, hasn't it? Half a century, I believe. Zombie, slightly impatient, returns the greeting to Media. They both take seats in the head chairs. He begins to criticize. Still not dressing like an academy director. 70 years old and still refusing to change. Media Boson retorts, refusing to back down. Not all women want to be beautiful. Until they die. She casts a meaningful glance towards Yamj. Just one word, and I can make you 10 years younger. He lowers his voice, trying to persuade her. Turning 70 tomorrow and still acting like a child. People should cherish their inner nature. Media Boson chuckled with amusement. You old geezer, you haven't changed a bit in 55 years. Zombie was irritated. This woman, ignoring his annoyance. She suddenly became inexplicably gentle and flirtatious. But even that stubborn old man has changed a lot. He's the one who brought me here. Media sighed. I had to breathe the same air as these arrogant fools. Suddenly, she changed the subject completely. I bet your granddaughter is quite beautiful. Zombie didn't answer, choosing to remain silent. After a moment, he finally spoke. It seems like it's about to begin. The students inside the training building, the new students, since it wasn't time for the competition yet, the top students were gathered together, each one sporting some seriously over-the-top hairstyle. And in that scene, Jin's black hair stood out more than ever. It also made him feel isolated and alone. He muttered to himself in frustration. Am I the only one with black hair? Is it because I have black hair that I don't belong here? No, more than that. A commoner among nobles. Jin remembered how they had treated him during the equipment inspection. He fell into a somber mood. Inferior am I? Suddenly, the crowd fell silent. It seemed someone important was approaching. Jin was also surprised, seemingly recognizing the person. He whispered, "It's her." A girl with blue hair was entering. With each step, she made the hearts of the male students pound. Jin seemed to be the calmest one present. He stood motionless. The person who just entered was none other than Arbin, the granddaughter of the Sword Emperor, Arbin. Jin couldn't remain calm any longer, because the person who just entered was the true hero of the game. And the only reason I poured my entire fortune into this, standing in this training hall. Memories of the game in the Kim era flood back, of the legendary hero Jiam Balhoa, who created this space, concurrent with the founding of the academy. It's a completely separate reality. The damage here is real, but the reality doesn't actually exist, because there's no interference from the real world. Here, even murder is disregarded. Up on the platform, Zombie and Media Boson are also discussing this matter. He intently observes below and asks, the Royal War in subspace. Why does Media seem so interested? Fighting in subspace is a tradition of our academy. But this year, there's a slight change to the Royal War format. The change is, students will be divided into groups of 10. So this is a survival game. Huh? Unlimited equipment, they say. The zombie's voice deepens. Unlimited equipment? You mean Doesn't that give the upper class a huge advantage? Media's expression turns icy. Don't bring that up. I had to negotiate for a long time to get this, whether you like it or not. This whole school is funded by the nobles. She couldn't help but complain. I went through a lot of trouble to get this system in place. The zombie nods in understanding. I see. He suddenly mentions Kim. Right, he's a special student. Meanwhile, Kim is blushing, heart-pounding, watching Nobel from afar. She's incredibly beautiful. Honestly, I thought she was just a 2D character, but those fools are trying to get close to her. Or maybe if I were as clueless as them, I would act the same way. I played this game, so I know. Nobel is a player with a miraculous blessing. In other words, she's the main character of the game. Eventually, someone as beautiful as her will find love. Kim let the Avon group pass by and silently decided. Besides, someone like me, a special student, not on their level, it's best I stay out of their way to avoid trouble. What are you doing? He took out a book and thought. The 3 principles I set for my future. Safety, complete my studies, secure a traditional job, and live a peaceful life. Kim opened the book. His eyes fell upon. It's filled with images of heroes who made history. Heroes? What kind of hero slowly withers away? Just pulling on a knife makes my body tremble. I'm still feeling dizzy. You should definitely close that book. You protect the world, and I'll find a cushy job. Suddenly, a strange, diamond-shaped object appears and emits an announcement from the school. The 783rd annual placement test of the Jiang Academy will now officially begin. I'll explain the rules. Kim, are you surprised? It's starting. The diamond-shaped object speaks again. This year, as announced, will be a royal battle. Both zombie and media listen intently. Among 10 randomly selected students, the top-ranked student will be placed in the star class. Ranks 2 and 3 will be placed in the dragon class. It continues to explain. Ranks 8 through 10 will be placed in the reward class. Those noble brats, and listening with an air of arrogance. Classes will be assigned. Based on these results, points will be recorded automatically, and there's no time limit. Kim listened intently, thinking it was just like a game. The goal is to always finish first. Hurry up and don't waste any time. The lengthy explanation ended as the subspace slowly opened, activating the subspace generator. The test begins. May the hero's blessing be with you. You feel your body gradually lose gravity. Kim thought to himself, I must try not to draw my blade. After a while, the school's announcement rang out. Group 24 assessment complete. First place, Jiho. Second place, Group 47 assessment complete. First place, Saki Ryo. Second place is Sarada, unfazed by the chaos below. The media continues chatting with Yams, pausing for a moment. In this situation, she opens a control panel and casually says to Zombie, you have a niece and some relatives named Jang Sol and John Jiam. This will significantly change the outcome. He's clueless, saying now. Suddenly, the media's voice rises, interrupting him. Look, 7 minutes and 14 seconds. That's so fast. On screen, Nobel's battle is shown. The media continues nonstop, saying, a C-rank weapon reached the 6th stage. Zombie explains, Nobel wants a fair assessment. She comments, that young man seems quite the show-off, doesn't he, Zombie? Although your 6th stage record hasn't been broken, she's still in the Academy's top 10 of all time. His voice was laced with pride as he spoke. What do you expect from a Beelan descendant? Suddenly, the zombie stood up, signaling the end was near. I'm off, I said to media. There's still one group left you mentioned, but they're at the store. He didn't seem to take this last group seriously. Probably just a bunch of stragglers. He said his goodbyes to media, promising to see her again. She teased him playfully, as was her habit. See you in the next life, old man. But as soon as she finished speaking, something happened that shocked everyone from the zombies. To media, to all the students present. No one could hide their astonishment. Media shouted, you sense it too, right? The zombie responded in disbelief. I can't believe it. The students in the courtyard were equally clueless about what was happening. They gathered in small groups, whispering amongst themselves. The zombie fell into deep thought. This energy, it's never been present in this building before. This is strange. That same terrifying aura appeared again, putting him and media on high alert. The subspace opened, dragging along beautiful fragments of debris. Zombie and media couldn't believe their eyes. The subspace, the pride of the United States, shattered. Something unidentified fell down, leaving the students watching in stunned silence. 2 people face-planted into the ground. It seemed they were the cause of this chaos. Commotion filled the training building courtyard. Someone just fell out of the subspace. Another unidentified bright spot appeared in the sky. Caution filled John Doe's eyes. Then the bright spot revealed itself. It was a brand new sashimi knife. It nearly impaled one of the two people who had just fallen. Media reacted swiftly, immediately ordering the medical staff to check the student's health. Just fell out. She kept urging me to hurry up. Surprisingly, one of the two people fell out of the remaining space. It was Kim. He struggled to accept the inevitable outcome. It was fate. Kim recalled the recent battle. There was a boy who reacted fiercely. This bastard. Immediately, Mao Xian grabbed the boy by the throat, and before he could react, his entire body was slammed mercilessly into the ground. Kim could only watch as Mao Jun and Mao Xian slaughtered the other students. He thought, unfortunately, it seems like I've fallen into a death match. They were the vicious twin brothers from the Iron King family. During that competition, Mao Jun continuously wore a cold, mocking expression. Such weak opponents. Mao Xian truly is a scumbag. He chokes people out while talking down to them. Is it over yet? Keep going. Despite their natural talent, their brutality and two-faced nature are unmatched. Kim seethed inwardly. These bastards. They've been toying with us for 30 minutes. He stood alone in the arena, thinking, do I look that weak? They're not even paying attention to me. Meanwhile, the student in Mao Xian's grip was motionless. He wondered, is he dead? Then, callously tossing the body aside, he turned and walked away. Can't even complain. How boring. He walked, counting on his fingers 1 to 2. What? Mao Jun seemed disbelieving. Confused, he turned to Mao Jun and asked, hey, how many were there?
He was currently tormenting an unfortunate student. The student gasped for air, pleading for the pain to stop. Mao Xian seemed to have noticed something. Mao Jun, without hesitation, pressed the student further into the ground and turned to ask, little brother, want this to end quickly or slowly? Annoying. Mao Jun showed no respect for his older brother. Go catch those 4. Mao Jun ignored him, pointing ahead. I'll let you apologize to that girl instead. The girl being referred to was Rue. Mao Jun shamelessly remarked, not bad, old man. Faced with these two inhumane individuals, Chloe could only tremble in fear. Even Kim, usually indifferent, couldn't stand by and watch. He thought to himself, the person sitting quietly in the corner looks terrified. She doesn't look like she's ready to fight at all. Thinking that, he couldn't help but curse, damn it. On the other side, Mao Xian was stepping towards Chloe E. Look at that disgusting expression on his face. Raising his fist like that and making threats suits my taste. Mao Xian said, I wonder what kind of scream will come from those delicate lips? I'd love to find out. Hearing these words, even Mao Jun couldn't help but feel contempt. Even if you're my brother, that's too twisted. Mao Jun ignored the remark. With a despicable, ferocious look, he continued. So, where should I tear you apart first? Kim couldn't stand it anymore and yelled, hey, you bastard! All 3 of them couldn't help but turn to look at him. He was so angry he couldn't control his words. Even if this is a subspace, you've gone too far. Are you all insane? Despite his bold front, he inwardly cursed. Damn it! I charged in without thinking. Mao Jun spoke up, annoyed. What's this? Another one. Mao Jun calmly reminded Sun to look at his name tag. Hearing this, the guy noticed Kim's green name tag. The disdain in his eyes intensified. A low-ranking student, especially a lowly star. The brothers, Mao Jun and Mao Sun, exchanged a contemptuous smirk. Mao Sun quickly stepped forward. Brother, let me handle this quickly. Mao Jun looked at the bloody ground and subtly agreed. He then proposed, since he dared to insult us, let's cut out his tongue. Mao Sun grinned wickedly. Understood. Kim was now caught in a dilemma. His mind was a tangled mess. Damn it, what should I do? Should I use the divine power of invincibility? No, they've been rampaging for 30 minutes already. What good is 30 seconds of pain immunity? Then he suddenly froze, as if remembering something. The set of sashimi knives in his bag suddenly gleamed, as if guiding Jean to use them. Thinking about the previous agonizing experiences, he thought hard. But if I wield the blessed sword, it will automatically activate the sword god's blessing. Jean seemed to have made a normal decision in his heart. No risks, stay safe. It hasn't even been half a day since I made my decision. Damn it! Mao Xian watched the events unfolding before his eyes. He spoke with bewilderment. What is this? Who would have thought that Jean would pull out a sashimi knife? This made the two Mao brothers freeze, stunned and speechless. A moment passed, and they burst into laughter. Damn it, is this a joke, you bastard? Mao Xian took a stance. The fighter spoke angrily, you're somewhat interesting, so I'll make your pain as minimal as possible. Then, without warning, he used the momentum of his heavy body, and leaped into the air. Mao Xian, from above, bellowed a threat. I'll crush your head first. Jean was already in a fighting stance. This isn't a situation where I can be picky. Just 30 seconds. It should be enough. The thought barely finished when he used Painless Blessing. A system notification appeared. For 30 seconds, all pain will be nullified by the blessing. Activation time, 30 seconds. Cooldown, 12 hours. The Sword God's blessing has been activated. With this blessing, it will counteract the pain from the Sword God's blessing. Mao Xian attacked while sneering disdainfully. How can you wield such a pathetic blade? The thug, Kim, looked up, calculating the trajectory. If he got hit, he'd be dead, filleted by that sashimi knife. The weight, his pupils constricted, facing the stark reality of life or death. Not a fish, but a human. In that precarious moment, Kim remembered a conversation with his master. Why do thugs in movies use sashimi knives? Can a sashimi knife actually cut a person, master? Isn't it just for fish? His master, enraged by his student's naivete. It's just a movie, you idiot, he had roared. Even God wouldn't help you if you tried that, you fool. Snapping back to reality, Kim watched Ma Xian approach, a chilling thought crossing his mind. One slash and it's over. A flash of light pierced the darkness. As if guided by a divine force, Mao Xian lunged forward. He roared in a frenzy, "Die, you bastard!" At the same time, Jean made a move towards him. With that strike, our sword saint had returned. With just a sashimi knife, he sliced off the arm of the giant, Mao Jun. The killing intent in Jin's eyes hadn't completely faded. He coldly watched Mao Xian plummet to the ground, thinking to himself, "May God's blessings be with you." The moment he turned Mao Xian into a one-armed man, Jin fell back into memories of his master. He had asked him, "Master, why do thugs in movies?" Suddenly, he felt a chilling cold brush past his neck. Jin's face paled. A sashimi knife was deeply embedded in the wall. It had nearly impaled him. His master sternly reminded him, "I told you to call me teacher. And why are you even asking about this? If you look closely, you'll notice he's missing a hand. But he's also a brilliant chef." Kim's first teacher was a former gangster. To atone for his past, he cut off one of his hands. He then opened a sashimi shop, because he wanted to use his knife skills to make people happy. His technique is truly impressive. Kim thought so and asked his teacher, "Why do gangsters in movies always use sashimi knives?" "I'm curious to know how he began. "Someone who's reached a certain level of knife skill shouldn't ask a question like that." He filleted the fish on the cutting board as he explained. "Think about it. If you stab someone with a large kitchen knife, the wound will start to contract. Will you be able to pull it out? A sashimi knife is very thin, so you can stab multiple times in quick succession, and can be easily pulled out. You're incredibly confusing, so why not just slice? One slice is enough to cut a fish, but why not a person?" Hearing this stupid question, the chef immediately got angry. "A fish on a cutting board, of course you can chop it. If they could stand, you could only dream of chopping them." Jin Xiao continued to speak. "In comics, every cut is swift and clean, but you, master, just lack skill." He got furious, and then delivered a brutal headbutt. "You brat, I'm your teacher, not your master, and even if the god of blades himself were to do it, it wouldn't look anything like that, understand?" Returning to the battle with Mao Sun, he still couldn't believe. His arm, freshly severed from his body, a bead of cold sweat trickled down his round face. Both Mao Jun and Louis couldn't believe their eyes. Only Jean remained, a silent grim reaper, standing motionless. And as if a switch had been flipped, Mao Xian's screams of pain and curses pierced the air. "You bastard! Damn you!" Tears welled up in the corners of his eyes, a narcissist robbed of his arm. The mental shock was overwhelming. My arm, my arm." Mao Xian clutched his bloody, throbbing arm, moaning in agony. It hurts so much." Fear spread like wildfire. He collapsed to the ground, shouting at Jean, "Don't come any closer. Stay back. I said stay back." But Jean continued to advance slowly, like a demon straight from hell. Mao Xian, with all his might, scrambled to his feet and ran. "Help! Help me!" Mao Jun was still reeling from what he had just witnessed. Mao Xian ran towards him, like a drowning man clinging to a lifeline. "Brother, save him, you bastard! His eyes are bloodshot with panic. Hurry, what's coming is coming." Mao Xian barely uttered the word, "Die!" before the sashimi knife greeted his neck. Blood sprayed everywhere. Mao Jun collapsed to the ground. Overcome by sheer terror, he stared at his brother's body before him, sweating profusely from fear. Mao Xian's wide, unblinking eyes stared back at him, like a silent accusation. Mao Jun lost his composure. He screamed, "Jun! Jun!" While they were distracted, Kim edged closer. Louis watched in horror. She wanted to say something, but the words caught in her throat. Mao Jun tried to reassure himself. "Calm down. This is the void. That knife. Xian isn't really dead." He looked at Kim, who stood motionless beside T. "Mao Xian's body. Even so, what's wrong with that bastard? I'm not sure. But it seems like it's his first time doing something like this." Mao Jun struggled to his feet, his breath ragged and shaky. "Was this just a coincidence? I definitely need to be careful with that knife." He gently picked up Mao Xian's severed arm. Xian's mistake was being too careless. So, Mao Jun equipped his brother's weapon and yelled, "This weapon will unleash its greatest power, if wielded with both hands." Immediately after, determined, he invoked a defensive blessing. His muscles bulged as if enhanced. Intervention blessing, strength amplified by 200%, spirit blessing, fist enhancement. It seemed like he gained 200% more confidence. Mao Jun smirked with disdain and instantly activated. This is an A-rank weapon that commoners wouldn't even dream of. His hands overflowed with undeniable power. "I don't know where you found that sword, but even S-rank weapons can't scratch it. I'm not like that Sun guy. I can't believe that Kim is whispering a countdown from 23 right now. 22, 21. Mao Jun's terrifying fist came hurtling forward. He roared, "Just stand there like an idiot? Are you giving your last words or something?" He threatened, "I'll crush your skull." Mao Jun's fist was mere inches from Kim's head. Unfazed, he continued his countdown, 7, 6. What the hell? The unthinkable happened. Mao Jun's massive body was riddled with swords. His blood-soaked body crashed down, landing beside his equally vile companion. He wasn't dead yet. His body trembled as he looked at the figure before him. Kim reached the final numbers, 3, 2. As he reached 1, he seemed to snap awake, invigorated. Mao's eyes slowly fluttered closed. He had been rejected by the king. The timer reached 0, ending everything. His body continued to tremble uncontrollably. A system notification appeared. Notification. The nullification period of the Supreme God's power has ended. As soon as the notification disappeared, Kim cried out in pain from using the divine power. Time slowly passed and Kim gradually regained consciousness. He silently observed the strange room he was in. After a moment of contemplation, Kim guessed, "Is this a hospital?" He tried to sit up. The pain made him groan involuntarily. A male teacher with a stern face pushed the door open and entered. Seeing that Kim was able to sit up, he called out to someone outside, "This student is awake." Immediately, a man and a woman entered the room. Kim was startled, wondering how he could recognize such unfamiliar faces. The people entering were Weemies and Media Poison. He remembered them, the heroes who defeated the Demon King 55 years ago, the commander of the 6th Legion, 2 of the 7 Great Star heroes. Kim looked at Zombie, silently marveling at the strongest human alive. Then he looked over at Media, the headmistress of Saint Academy, Media Poison. She kindly asked, "Are you all right, young man?" Kim mechanically replied, "Yes, I'm fine." Afterward, he couldn't help but wonder about these two. Why were they here? Then, Zombie spoke. "What's your name?" He instinctively replied, "Gang Roma." Zombie's expression turned predatory. Intimidatingly, he got straight to the point. "Gang Ryoma," Zombie interrogated. "What exactly did you do?" Kim recalled the rage he felt at that moment. It wasn't his imagination. He had done it. He seemed to have realized something. Jean looked at the long sword in the zombie's hand, impaled by the monster. This thing being pinned here doesn't bode well. So he quickly spoke up first. "Even if it's just a void dimension, I think their actions have crossed the line. However, I also think my actions were a bit excessive. I volunteer to accept any punishment." After saying that, both Jin and the zombie stared intently at each other. He seemed to want to glean something from Jin's words. Suddenly, Media spoke up, breaking the silent confrontation. "You old fool, how could you treat a child like that?" she said, then sat up on the bed. Somewhat perversely, she caressed Jin's body. "Even if you say that Secret was the one who stopped your bleeding when you were unconscious. People often say the older you get, the grumpier you become. Isn't that right?" Then Media suggestively brought her hand to her mouth. "Except for this face of mine, of course." The zombie immediately flew into a rage. "I told you not to say it." Media, seeing an opportunity, pressed further. She clung to Jim's well-built body and laughed mockingly. "Look, the old man's embarrassed. Hearing this, you can't help but be surprised." "Him? Why is Media still lost in her own little world of happiness? Look at those shoulders." Meanwhile, Jim felt his body and thought, "No wonder my body feels as light as a feather, or rather soaking wet." Media's eyes lit up. She explained, "While you were in a coma, thanks to the ghost, we were able to extract the tape and watch it with the staff." She recalled with excitement, "The scene where you risked your life to protect that poor girl was like a dream come true, like a prince." Media was practically drooling. "No, you really are a prince. For this shameless person." Zombie couldn't bear to watch any longer. He cleared his throat, interjecting, "Ahem." Media's speech was continuously interrupted. She was getting visibly annoyed. "All right, old man," Zombie finished his thought, "have some decency. Regain the dignity of a headmaster." Media reassured Jean, "Your actions during the test were not wrong, so there's no need to worry. The truth is, those Ma twins got into the academy by flattering the elders. They said they would drop out on their own." She finished, looking at Jean with envy. "Impressive." He silently understood. He felt a sense of relief. "It seems I won't have to deal with them at school anymore." Zombie, after a moment of silence, finally spoke. "We're here to inform you, Kim." Kim startled. "Yes, thank you, sir." Media couldn't help but exclaim, "Yuma, you have one of the highest scores. Congratulations." He was completely taken aback by those words, doubting his own ears. "Wait, what?" Kim felt like falling into an endless black hole. His mind screamed, "What?" Safe, sound, and healthy. A tall, magnificent building appeared. From the outside, you could see inside the room. Media sat on a chair, sighing. She held a teacup and said dejectedly, "I've been headmaster for almost 25 years. This is the first time something like this has happened." Recalling the conversation with Kim moments ago, he had defiantly replied, "I don't want to." Both Media, Point Sun and Yams were startled and shocked. At that time, Media said, "Do you know Yuma? Don't you understand what a Class A rank means? Did I hear that correctly?" While the elders are furious, a decision regarding the top student has been made, based on the results directly observed in the dimensional space. Kim was momentarily silent, but he still firmly refused. "But I still don't want to." This left the two elders utterly bewildered. Zombie silently looked at him, a hint of appraisal in his eyes. Media spoke up, "Zombie." The call brought him back to reality. Media, sitting opposite him, said, "You're still upset because Yuma took your niece's top spot. Why do you keep looking at your feet?" Zombie calmly picked up his teacup and replied, "That's truly foolish. There's nothing more foolish than doubting. Judgment of the subspace contains the will of the founding hero. The academy itself chose him as the leader, so we just have to abide by that decision." He said that, but his mind was still in turmoil. If his abilities were truly exceptional, then I could understand. If his physical strength were extraordinary, then I would accept it. If he were vastly experienced, I would nod in agreement. But what that immature brat displayed was beyond comprehension. Zombie recalled the image of Jean fighting, a power that seemed to tear space apart, striking at one's very consciousness. It filled him with astonishment. Every movement seemed to hold some deeper meaning. The swordsmanship I've pursued my entire life, yet it fills me with unease. When he opened his meridians, when he examined Jin's physique, Zombie assessed a weak body lacking resolve, untrained and physically lacking. Felt like something that shouldn't be held back, existed within him. Back in the present, Zombie sighed, closing his eyes. At his age, he set down his teacup. He was still so competitive. And with a kid, no less, the same age as his granddaughter. Suddenly, Media's voice broke through his thoughts, interrupting his train of thought. That face, it's quite appealing. And the way he defeated the enemy to rescue that terrified girl was impressive. If I were 10 years younger, no, this age is still fine. Isn't it? Old man, what do you think? She asked, smiling at Zombie, leaving him speechless. But he finally spoke up. Do you know what the students call women your age? Media, perplexed, asked back. Then, with a nonchalant expression, she boldly demanded, tell me, what do they call someone like me? Media set her teacup down on the table. The movement was anything but gentle. She frowned, clearly annoyed by Media's confusion. Zombie uttered each word slowly, Media. Hearing this, Media was instantly enraged. Her aura shook the entire room. At the academy, Jean stood before a door. The sign read Godflash Class. This made him grimace. It was the best deal he could get. Remembering his time in the hospital, a heated debate had erupted. The media loudly insisted he be placed in a higher class. Headmaster, Jim said, I want to be in the beginner class. His request only fanned the flames in the media's hearts. How can the top student be placed in that class? The academy, don't we promote equality? Why not? Even so, the beginner class is unacceptable. After a long discussion, Media was sweating bullets. Instead, she said, we'll keep your request a secret. Media couldn't help but feel uneasy. She thought, if we put you in the beginner class, the elders will make a huge fuss. Jim, however, was completely perplexed. He snapped back to reality. He thought to himself, my plan is to complete my studies in a lower level class. It's better than competing with higher-ranked classes. Lost in thought, he slowly pushed open the door. He couldn't help but sigh in frustration. At least this was still within his control. After he stepped inside, the door slammed shut with a loud bang, startling him. He stood there awkwardly, the center of attention in the entire hall. Everyone stopped what they were doing to look at him. Then they noticed his name tag, Yuma. Not exactly an influential figure, so no one cared. They continued chatting and laughing amongst themselves, paying him no mind. Yuma walked down the stairs, silently praying, please don't look, just keep ignoring me. He finally found a satisfactory seat and let out a sigh of relief. Phew, completely ignored. It seemed the headmaster had done a good job keeping his information confidential. A loner has their own way of life. This might actually be a good thing, he thought to himself, smiling and humming a tune. Suddenly, something caught his attention. It was Louis. She appeared timid and embarrassed. Louis approached Kim and greeted him. Excuse me, thank you for what you did. This unexpected encounter surprised him. Kim remained silent, feigning ignorance. Chloe blushed and continued, during that test, that jogged Kim's memory. Oh, he wondered to himself, why is she so formal? We're the same age. But he replied with a bright smile, no need to thank me. Anyone would have done the same. Kim thought to himself, even though it looks like I saved her, I was just trying to survive. I feel like a hypocrite. Then, Kim softened his demeanor. Come to think of it, we haven't properly met. I'm Kong Juma. Louis smiled back. My name is Louis. It's a pleasure to meet you, Louis, he said in a friendly tone. I didn't expect us to be in the same class. Louis beamed. The pleasure's all mine. After a moment of getting acquainted, he tilted his head in confusion. Who is Chloe? I've played almost all of the games, but I don't recognize that character. If I remember correctly, the main storyline in the second half focuses on the battle with the demon race. A new character appearing now is quite unexpected. Kim suddenly realized. He's just a background character like me. He spoke again. Oh right, by the way, could you keep a secret about what happened during the test? Chloe cheerfully replied, huh? Oh, of course. She looked as if she was about to say something. By the way, if you don't mind. Suddenly, someone walked in and announced loudly, cutting her off mid-sentence. Everyone, to your seats. Kim looked at Rohi and mouthed, we'll talk later. She could only sigh regretfully. The instructor slammed a thick stack of documents onto the desk. First, congratulations on being accepted. The instructor stood at the podium, beaming with pride. Your presence here means you have been chosen to inherit the will of our founding hero, Bulroyakin. This is an incredible honor. My name is Wonbying, and I'll be your homeroom teacher for the Lang class. Today is your first day, so we'll start with some simple physical exercises. Nothing too strenuous. Change into your training clothes and meet at the training grounds in 30 minutes. Just then, a bespectacled student raised his hand to speak. What kind of training is it, sir? Wonbin replied simply, it's easy, just 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups, and 100 squats. After that, just run 10 laps around the training grounds. If there are no more questions, get changed and meet at the training grounds. Dismissed, everyone started heading out. Only Jim remained, sitting there with a helpless look on his face. He thought, are these exercises meant to turn trainees into bald soldiers? Is that it? He approached the podium and called out, Instructor Wonbin? Yes. Wonbin replied. Jim was surprised. How did he know his name? How did the instructor know his name? But that wasn't important right now. The important thing was, he needed an excuse. An excuse to skip this tedious training session. I'm feeling a little under the weather. Wonbin pondered for a moment. Then he said, this training session will do you a world of good. Or perhaps we switch to mental acuity training. The headmaster has granted you permission to attend all classes. Jim froze for 5 seconds. Damn it, that woman. What was so secret? Recalling media's promises made his mouth twitch. Jim quickly recovered, scratching his head with an awkward laugh. No, thank you, he replied. I think I just need a little break in the lounge. I'm feeling a bit tired right now. This schedule works perfectly for me. Wonbin exclaimed in admiration. As expected, of the top academy. See you at training. Yes, sir, Jim replied. Outside on the training grounds, Jim trained until sweat poured down his face. He gasped for air, his footsteps heavy on the ground. The instructor's urging cries of 1, 2 echoed. Don't be lazy. Faster, faster. The class ran ahead, leaving. Jim, still focused, trailing behind. He was utterly exhausted and couldn't help but mutter, damn it. The instructor's voice still rang out, 1, 2, faster. Lewis ran up beside him, asking worriedly, is it too much? You don't look so good. Jim looked over, surprised. Yeah. Despite his exhaustion, he managed to smile. It's okay. It's fine. Lewis continued, how many laps have you done, Yuma? Jim replied, probably 5. Chloe, how about you? You seem to be falling behind a bit. Lewis innocently replied, I'm on my 9th lap. Kim couldn't believe her ears. Lewis clasped his hands together, cheering her on. You can do it. You got this. With that, she quickly sprinted ahead. Kim, however, still lagged behind. The sun began to set. Inside a room, empty water bottles lay scattered across the floor. 2 more empty bottles sat on the table. Kim slammed a water bottle down on the table. She collapsed onto the bed, sighing, man, I'm starving. 1 week into the academy, and I've already run into an unexpected problem. In the academy's dining hall, the students were gathered, ready to feast. After their grueling training sessions, Kim couldn't hold back any longer. She blurted out, to everyone's confusion, I'm so hungry. I'm starving. She rushed to the food counter and requested, pork. 1 serving of pork, please. Please hurry up, sir. The chef looked over with sharp eyes. Kim paused, looking at a meal ticket container. He wondered, isn't it free? Kim quickly replied, I'll go get a ticket right now. 1 order of pork with rice, please. But suddenly he froze. Kim's eyes accidentally landed on the dining hall's price list. 50,000 won for pork belly. He stood before the expensive menu, incredulous. 50,000 won for pork? He stood there, stunned, muttering unconsciously, 50,000, 50,000 won. The last drops of water fell back to reality. Kim was tilting back a water bottle, trying to squeeze out the last drops. Then he angrily threw the bottle away, cursing, damn it, 50,000 won for a plate of pork and rice? That's highway robbery. His eyes blazed with murderous intent. I'm starving. Easier on the dramatic flair, will ya? I'm almost out of money. Jean remembered when his father offered him money. He refused without hesitation. Facing the harsh reality, he felt utterly defeated and drained. Completely helpless, Jean curled up under his blanket. He buried himself in the sheets, filled with regret. I should have taken the money. I'm such an idiot. I've been surviving on the cheapest water in the academy for days now. Suddenly, a message popped up on the screen, Sword God's Blessing. It read, if injured, will be nullified, because your physique has been enhanced. The sword's requirements have been loosened. The blessing will only activate for swords shorter than 30 centimeters in length and less than 5 centimeters in width. Jean pondered, frustrated. Just thinking about it made the status window pop up, but he jumped up and stood in front of the mirror. His tank top rode up, revealing a six-pack. He said with satisfaction, "All that hard work wasn't wasted." Kim looked down at his hands in amazement. "Did the sword god's blessing open my meridians? At this rate, I'll reach new heights. The sword god's blessing hasn't leveled up yet. If I keep diligently improving step by step, I'll soon be able to wield a short sword." Kim glanced at the two sharp knives on the table. He smiled again. "Just the other day at the entrance ceremony, I was afraid to even touch a sword. But now, if I don't hold a sword, even for a minute, my hands get itchy. Is this the effect of the blessing? Am I being a bit too proud?" A sudden knock startled him. "Who is it?" Kim asked gruffly, opening the door. It was Louis. She was still bashful, a hint of worry on her face. Hesitantly, she asked, "Did I disturb your rest, Louis? Why is she here?" Jean wondered. He cheerfully replied, "Not at all, I was just lying down." "What's up?" Louis lowered his head and carefully explained, "It's just that it's been a week, and I haven't seen you in the academy cafeteria. I was worried you weren't feeling well." Jean smiled outwardly and said, "Well, I'm not used to eating other people's cooking." But inwardly, his mouth was watering profusely. "I absolutely love it, actually." Hearing that, Yuri was relieved. "I understand," she said reassuringly. "Don't worry." Suddenly, Yuri hesitated slightly before suggesting, "If you'd like, Jean, I was thinking of buying some ingredients from the academy grocery store. Make dinner." Before she could finish, Kim had already put on his jacket. He grinned. "Then let's go." Louis was so surprised he felt a tingle. Kim continued, "Didn't you want to have dinner with me?" She was still processing his words and actions. "Right?" Kim hummed cheerfully as they walked down the hall. "I'm a good cook, so leave it to me." Louis, delighted, hurried after him. Kim continued, "Your dorm is across the street, right? Let's walk together." Outside, night had fallen. Stars twinkled in the sky. Only a few windows still glowed with light. Inside Louis's room, she ate and exclaimed, "This is so good." Kim replied, "I'm glad you like it." Louis continued, "You didn't leave anything behind, and you ate so fast." Kim fell silent for a moment. He looked down at his clean plate and said, "I only know how to boil fish. I've never really cooked anything else. Let me check the fridge." Kim looked inside the refrigerator, surprised to see it filled with containers of fish. "But you really like fish, huh?" Louis replied, "Yeah. I come from a riverside town." Kim immediately said, "Awesome, because fish dishes are my specialty." Kim thought to himself, "Good. Anyway, my hands are itching to get to work. Let's try slicing some sashimi. But the problem is, the sword god's blessing." Kim looked down at the kitchen knife rack hesitantly. Then he turned and asked, "Do you have a longer knife?" Louis asked back, "Longer?" He explained, "Yeah, my weapon is a sword, so using a knife like this feels a little awkward." Louis said, "I understand." Louis didn't ask anything further. Moments later, as Kim was bustling about in the kitchen, Louis called out. He cheerfully offered his sword. "Will this do?" This left Kim speechless. He said exasperatedly, "No, I only use kitchen knives." "No way." He grabbed a kitchen knife, activated his sword god's blessing, and tensed up. "I have to finish this in 30 seconds, he told himself. Then he began to work on the fish. "I'm known as the best swordsman. I can do this," Kim encouraged himself. The sword god's blessing began to take effect. With a few swift cuts, the fish on the plate was perfectly clean. Kim thought to himself, 21 seconds. Time to deb one. He removed the fins, filleted the fish, and smiled. Satisfied with his work, Kim smirked. "Absolutely stunning. A masterpiece. I'm still alive." Louis marveled. "How can you be such a good cook?" He replied, "I used to work part-time at a Japanese restaurant." Louis was taken aback. "Part-time?" Kim asked. "Don't you know what a part-time job is?" Louis looked slightly embarrassed. "I apologize." Kim chuckled. No need to apologize. You're thinking what I'm thinking. This class difference." Then Kim said cheerfully, Anyway, I'm glad you enjoyed the meal. Lewis nodded enthusiastically. She offered, since you cooked, let me do the dishes. Kim readily agreed. Okay, thanks for your help. With that said, Chloe diligently went about her work. Kim, with nothing to do, sat swaying, full and content. The moon is so beautiful, it makes me want to hum a tune. Before she could enjoy it, the clanging of dishes rang out, accompanied by a clumsy voice. I'm sorry, Kim, a voice said, dripping with sweat. Then more clanging sounds followed. Lewis panicked, she stammered apologies. Kim found it somewhat amusing watching the figures back, wondering if they had ever washed dishes before. Right, at that age I had already washed dishes. While he was moon-gazing, something fell from the cupboard. It was a book. The wind flipped it open, revealing its contents. Surprisingly, it was a diary. Inside, a page appeared, containing something about him. I got some help on the placement test today. I definitely have to repay them somehow. Kim gasps. Round handwriting and cute stickers. He picks up the notebook. He smiles, thinking he should probably just put it back. Lewis is just like other stereotypical girls. Suddenly, a gust of wind blows, turning to a different page. Kim looks slightly flustered. Turn to another page. He looks down at the contents of the page in surprise. Turns out the guy who helped me is in my class. His name is Doma. My team is so fast, I don't know what to do. I can't bring myself to talk to him. After reading, he lets out a small, "Oh." Kim's smile is so cute. He finally understands the reason. So that's why you couldn't talk to me? A sly grin spreads across Kim's face. Should I read a little more? The title is boldly printed with your name, Yuma. The pages behind it repeatedly say, knocks him, knocks him, knocks him, leaving Kim speechless in surprise. The words knocks him make him lose his composure. The clatter of dishes shatters the silence. Lewis stands beside the shattered remains of a broken vase. Looking at his diary in Kim's hands, he asks, did you see it? Hero families earn respect by slaying monsters, gaining society's admiration and solidifying their status. However, within these stagnant organizations, certain benefits are granted, allowing them to exploit the poor under the guise of authority. When the government lost all its power, a hero family rose up, cloaking themselves in darkness. That family's name is the Auditor Resisha, a family that operated in the shadows, striving for the light, combining the upholding of order with assassination. Amidst a backdrop of stark brutality, those born into the Auditor family must undergo a neurological test before puberty, stripped of emotions and subjected to rigorous training. Lewis is astonished, her eyes wide with the realization of what she must do. The man before her, seemingly devoid of strength, is her target. Under the elder's stern gaze, Lewis trembles with fear, yet her grip on her sword remains firm. The elder places his hand over Lewis's, seeking to calm her. To become an assassin, the age a girl first stains her hands with blood. It is 15. After taking down her target, she is now indifferent. Her hand and sword are stained crimson. Despite this, enduring such harshness forges an unyielding spirit. Chloe Auditor departs for Syria. Don't deny your talent for assassination. The old man's words left Lewis in a daze. It was something she had heard even before she grew up. Lewis had accepted it. Returning to reality, she gently lifted her veil. Her swordsmanship, used to take down enemies, had become refined, and her demeanor was now more hardened than before. Relentless training had warped her spirit, created a deep darkness within her heart. And so, by the time her reason had completely vanished and only vestiges of emotion remained, Chloe came of age to attend school. The idyllic and somewhat elegant scenery highlighted the academy's grandeur. Before Lewis, it was now bustling with students. This was the Jacquin Academy, where students were placed in classes based on their skills. Although every member of the Auditor family, a dark element, clearly possesses skills above dragon level. Lewis pondered excitedly, thinking, they're all placed in regular classes because of family tradition. It's an agreement between the family and the academy. Suddenly, she recalled the old man's warning, disappear from my sight. It made her feel a little melancholic. Chloe somberly reflected on her endured hardships. 3 years of her youth stolen by her family, stripped of all personal freedom, facing a destiny of becoming an assassin. Chloe never complained. She accepted it, never even considering changing it, just continuing on. She thought that way until she met a male student. In the gloomy setting, a shout suddenly erupted. "Hey, you bastard! Are you crazy? You damn creep! Don't touch her!" Kim finished speaking just as Mao Xian started noticing him with a slightly annoyed expression. In the royal battle within the subspace, even though this death isn't real, it will be the first time she experiences death. She's not afraid. She's hugging herself because it's so cold. Then she's startled to realize there's someone else here. Who else is it? Chloe calmly accepts her predetermined death. She long ago gave up futile resistance. That's how she learned to live, and has always lived that way. Back in reality, Mao Xian now looks quite amused. "I'll kill you first, then that girl, right?" Nothing can be changed. Lewis can only watch what unfolds before her. Fate has been decided. A flash of red slashes through, or was it predestined? Lewis looks intently, but it feels like sunlight piercing through dark clouds. In a storm, something is burning brightly within her. A sword wielded with both mind and heart. The images of Kim slashing that arrogant Mao Sun look impressive. Gradually creeping into her eyes, the image of Lewis being bullied by those people has caused Kim to rise up for what's right. A sword drawn to protect someone. She is the reason that boy uses a sword. The scene of Lewis by her bedside in the memory resurfaces. From her childhood, she always remembers the fairy tale that she secretly kept by her bed. Turning the pages of the fairy tale book from her younger days, she was so happy about the prince who was imprisoned in the castle. Before her eyes is the heroic prince return. Now Kim appears in Luo Yi's eyes as a savior. Note, assuming Luo Y is Luo Yi, he looks so strong and resolute. And in his hand, he holds a knife radiating powerful energy. A story revolving around how the prince appeared and saved everyone. Chloe cupped her cheeks in her hands. Her face flushed crimson, and her heart began to race. A vague, indescribable feeling began to rise within her. Chloe stood still, lost in thought. Despite the chaos erupting around her, Chloe had only one thought in mind. Lewis was completely smitten. This was love. The battle ended. As for Kim, he looked quite worried and speechless. Lewis appeared with a frightening expression, and a red aura emanated from her. Kim, embarrassed, could only scratch his head. Inside the room, the current situation, no one spoke a word, they just stared at each other. Kim, flustered and sweating, thought to himself, "Did I do something wrong?" He gulped nervously. Was that the moment I found this girl innocent? Or was I a fool to follow her just for a meal? Kim spoke up. "Chloe, isn't the moon beautiful tonight?" There was no reply. She continued, "Thank you. It's been a while since I've had such a good meal." She smiled warmly. "I should get going. See you tomorrow." Lewis Chen's voice cut in. "So you saw it?" Kim froze. "Huh? Saw what?" Lewis spoke as he removed his gloves. Kim's eyes widened as she noticed the notebook on the table. "Ah, are you talking about this notebook?" she asked urgently. "You must have studied hard." Lewis's voice boomed. "My diary." Kim trembled, thinking, "Do you have eyes in the back of your head? When did you see it? And you even used that tone of voice. I told you to change it. I'll make her change it again." "You're saying I don't have it?" Lewis replied. "Don't you see anything? The interrogation is just going on." "I don't see anything. Don't lie, young. I see it." As soon as the words left his mouth, silence fell once more. Kim was startled. Chloe started to draw her sword, her face filled with rage. "Kim, what's wrong? Why so sudden?" All those emotions vanished. Kim's heart lurched. No, it's not the scenery outside. It's the 4th floor, the highest floor, and doubt crept into his mind. If I jumped from here, I'd be nothing but broken bones and mangled flesh. His mind raced, unstable, coupled with the undeniable calculations as he thought, the knife I used before, no. If I went that far, I'd definitely lose a leg or an arm. Chloe, with an emotionless face, in her hand, held her sword, with the intent to draw and strike. Jinwoo could no longer remain calm. Suddenly, a light emanated from the box cutter, drawing his attention to the container. Lewis arrived. The true climax was about to unleash its fury upon Jinwoo. Jinwoo's eyes widened in panic, then a spark of opportunity ignited within them. He swiftly snatched the box cutter. His hand forcefully extended the blade. A system panel materialized. A cascade of skills activated. A surge of mental states. Words and actions momentarily carried a menacing aura. Power was being calibrated, refined. Above all, the sword god's guardian spirit was awakened. The box cutter was now imbued with power. Let the strike commence. Sharper, deadlier than before. May the Lord's blessings be with you. A brilliant blue light radiated outwards. As Lewis pressed forward to attack him, a light emanates from your hand. Kim speaks. Close, your hair's gotten a bit long. Close is taken aback by his words. Let me trim it for you. Red streaks flash, forming an artistic cut. In Chloe's bedroom, Chloe's figure lies on the bed. She slowly sits up. Rubbing her head, she murmurs Yuma's name. She searches the room, wondering aloud, "Where are you, Yuma?" Lewis blushes, remembering the moment she shyly glanced at Kim. "I remember looking out the window while doing the dishes." I peeked a little. She suddenly realizes something is amiss. Panicked, she throws back the covers. She cries out for her sword. Lewis spots the sword, resting beside her desk. She breathed a sigh of relief. "It's a good thing I often lose consciousness when I hold a sword." Chloe reminisced about the past. An old man's voice echoed in her mind. "Well done, Chloe." Quite bewildered, she wondered what had just happened. Chloe's master continued, "Don't worry, don't deny your talent for assassination." Chloe looked at the sword pensively. Embarrassed, she buried her face in her pillow and berated herself. "You idiot, Lewis. Why did you faint at that moment, Yuma?" At that thought, her face flushed crimson. Her voice stuttered, failing to form words. She questioned herself. "Did I say anything strange while I was unconscious?" Lewis looked curiously at the paper knife on the floor. She twirled her hair. "How did that paper knife end up on the floor?" She looked at her hair in surprise. "Looks like my hair got shorter. Was that knife for cutting my hair?" She slowly walked towards the trash can to investigate. "Seems like he cleaned up and left already." Lewis pondered. "Yuma is really kind." Her face lit up with happiness as she thought of Kim. "I should write this down in my diary before I forget." Immediately, she pulled out her diary. Chloe happily finished writing in her diary. On the diary page, the words appeared, written neatly and cleanly. "Yuma, I like you." The scene changes from Chloe's room. Kim was staggering. He immediately leaned against a corner and vomited. He thought back to that moment. "I got through that situation." The image of the system from that time echoed with a notification. Painless blessing has ended. He started calculating. "I'm 5 seconds over the 9-second mark, and this is what happened." Suddenly, Jin's nausea surged again. "Are you feeling sick again? I'm about to throw up everything I ate for dinner." After a while, Jin finally felt better. He sat on a chair, looking at the night sky and sighing wearily. His face was filled with disappointment. "Dinner's completely gone to waste. I'm so hungry, Lewis." He looked at the moon, pondering. What is the usual purpose of a swordsman? Either to take the enemy's life with a single slash, or to subdue them. Jean pictured Chloe wielding a sword. However, the sword that Lo uses continuously targets weak points, as if it's specifically designed for assassination. He started to think, if I were ambushed, my head would definitely have rolled. Kim recalled, the moment he used his own strength to retaliate. Close call. I felt my life was threatened. He swung at her, instinctively aiming for his neck. Luckily, the knife was short, so it only grazed his hair. Kim sighed again. He checked himself over, thinking, I cleaned up quickly, so there shouldn't be any other traces. Staying safe and secure is no easy task. They say living a normal life is the hardest, but this is even worse. This is actually the first time I've played this shameless game. I'm full of ambition. A man who has reached the pinnacle of sashimi knife wielding. The air around him grew heavy. Kim continued to ponder. Giving up on a man's romance isn't easy. However, everyone has their duty. A blinding light appears. Miracle Blessing is the name of the game, and blessings are only bestowed upon this world's protagonist, whom I haven't met yet. Besides the Blessing of Valor, Ba Lo Wa Kin, I remember there were only 2 legendary blessings in this game. They both belong to the Oracle. A desperate plea appears in red text. Please save the world from the Demon King. Kim recalls the plot, and the protagonist is a system interface. It appears, granting an SS rank, a legendary sword called True Wound. It has the ability to grant its user near absolute power, but this sword chooses its owner. You think it's possible to be chosen by both the holy sword and the demonic sword, Ban Mong? Unlike me, your knife, Daiso Sashimi. Daiso Sashimi knives are known for their sharpness. Despite the rather plain packaging, it's a quality product. You retort, need I explain further? Kim slaps you across the face with both hands. You yell, focus. We got into this academy, and we're constantly bombarded with absurd situations and numbers. Kim watches a shooting star streak across the night sky. He says, I've lost sight of my goal. So many things holding me back. You mutter, took me 4 hours to figure that out. Is there even one normal person in this entire academy? I don't really understand the major players in this game, and to be honest, I don't know much about this world either. It's only been a week since I started here. Well, speak of the devil. And they've completed the enrollment process, meaning this game story is really about to begin. I know the general plot, but not how it ends. GM can't believe that he regrets quitting this game. Of course, knowing the main story up to the midpoint is an advantage. Obviously, whatever happens, just stick to the main route. He contemplates his path. Left sign. I want to live a quiet life. Right sign. Will I become a leader? He ponders. If things go south, all this effort will be wasted. If I remember correctly, the dark times begin in the second semester of year 3. Sensing the rise of a hero, the demons will unite under the command of the demon lord and march forth threatening everything. The Academy's influence will continue to grow. Ultimately, a great war will erupt between demons and humans. But the game's plot follows a rather cliched pattern. Kim, what's wrong? Why the sudden change in direction? I yearn for a vibrant youth. I've never experienced adolescence. He grimaced, feeling a strange sensation as he stared at his phone. How could they die like that? It's a bit terrifying. I'm too attached to these characters. I think I'll just delete this game. What's even more frightening is, something terrible has happened in this world. He sat alone, gazing at the star-filled, war-torn sky. Will I also die in the war? No, there's still almost 3 years left. My most realistic goal right now is to escape this absurd place. Looking down at the ground, I can't just die like this. I need to become stronger to survive. Most mass-produced games like this have happy endings. This world will also be saved by the main characters, but I need the strength to protect myself. I can't just leave it to fate, so I need to train in secret. If I stand out too much, I might be drafted into the army to fight those demons. That's something I need to avoid. Besides, I also need to be careful when using Painless Blessing, Kim's 7 gods, he muttered. Painless Blessing. Why did you make me pick up that sashimi knife? Now the burden falls on my shoulders. The system window appeared. It displayed the information for Painless Blessing. If injured, will be disabled. Physical level 2, swords requirements loosen. Mental level 3, words and actions carry more weight, more intimidating. Weapon level 1, insufficient conditions to unlock. Synchronization rate, 1.5%. Looking at the system panel, he exclaimed, this is impressive, but he rubbed his chin, staring intently at the panel. It seemed like there was a lot of new information. Physical, mental, weapon. The numbers here seem to represent levels. And this synchronization rate. What's this? His curiosity piqued. He immediately tapped the system panel. It displayed insufficient conditions to activate. Synchronization rate, 1.5%. Can only activate. Suddenly the system panel turned red. System access restricted. Due to insufficient conditions for use. Confused, the static wasn't important. Jinwoo contemplated another puzzling question. The most important thing is training, physical conditioning, and I need a new weapon. I can't rely on the blessing of the Undying's 30 seconds forever. Granted, I also need to train with a sword, but not under the conditions of the blessing sword. Jinwoo looked at the phone in his hand. Good thing there's a practical combat test next month, replacing the midterm exam. The reward for this training session is a B-rank Muramasa blade. If I can master it, that should be enough to graduate. Its standards are different from the blessing sword, so it won't be a primary weapon. Jinwoo frowned. There was more to do than he thought. A voice suddenly interrupted his thoughts. He instinctively glanced towards the source. Seeing a girl, that's my spot. Aben moved closer to her glistening, sweat-covered body. She looked at Kim while he was taken aback. The air between the two seemed to freeze as Kim and Aben stared at each other. It made her uncomfortable. Aben was close. His voice, "Can you move a bit?" startled him. He let out a sound. Kim thought, "Aben, damn it." No matter how he looked at it, it felt like a dream. He moved to the side, just staring at him without paying attention to anything else. AB reminded him, "You don't need to go somewhere else. Just move a little." He remained silent. Kim glanced at her. He pondered, "But your spot. Isn't this seat Jung's? Is this because of class discrimination? Oh right. Getting involved with the main character would be way too complicated. So even if I don't like it, I should probably keep my distance." On Avon's side, she simply and gently wiped away the beads of sweat on his skin, making Jim stare in awe. He thought to himself, "Damn, she's incredibly beautiful." Avon spoke, "This is one of the most starlit places," making his heart skip a beat. Startled, Jim silently turned to look at her. She was gazing at the stars in the sky. He thought, "Is this really Avon? The granddaughter of the sword saint I've heard of?" That handsome main character was also pretty hard to approach from the start. Avon turned and started a conversation with Jim. "Is your weapon a sword too?" Still flustered, he replied, Yeah. How did you know?" A seemingly shy Avon blushed and said, "He told me." She looked up at him. "I heard that Swordsman has a completely different look in her eyes." Jean blushes slightly, remaining silent. Suddenly, Nobel points her sword towards him. She smiles confidently and asks, "Would you like to try holding it?" Jean hesitates, looking at her. "It doesn't look heavy at all." His words cause even Aben to look annoyed with him. They both fall silent. Jean is lost in thought. Is he sulking? He looks at her awkwardly. This is hard to adjust to. Is this really the Aben I know? Aben, with a serious expression, hesitates before speaking to him. She looks directly into Jin's eyes with conviction. "You know I'm right, don't you?" Nobel hesitates. Jean then turned and asked, "You know I'm right, don't you?" Kim's face immediately went blank. He thought to himself, "Is he asking me that because he suspects something? Of course not. Then what? Who in this school doesn't know who Nobel is?" He was sweating bullets, but managed to calmly reply, "I know a little bit." Avon suddenly said, "I don't know you." This made Kim even more confused. "What does he mean?" She laughed and said, "Isn't it a little strange? You know my name, but I don't know yours." Hearing that, he immediately became suspicious. "Am I supposed to tell my name to a complete stranger?" She casually replied, "Who knows? You could be one of the Demon King's spies, trying to infiltrate the academy." Abe hesitated for a moment, then continued, "Or, I can't think of any reason why you'd be out here alone so late at this hour." Kim didn't know how to respond, just mumbled, "Did you see it?" She gripped the long sword in one hand and raised it. Seeing this, a pointless answer arose in his mind. "No reason." Kim countered, "Then why are you here?" Abe replied bluntly, "Isn't it obvious? I'm training." "You said you were training too?" She inquired. "Training what?" Kim said calmly, "Breathing." His answer made her freeze. She turned to him with a look of disbelief. Kim glanced at her outstretched hand and noticed the wound. Abe, seeing him staring, quickly withdrew his hand. Her cheeks flushed crimson. Her lips pressed together. He finally spoke. "You really are hard-working." She acknowledged, "Of course I am." Abe seriously expressed his inner thoughts. "No one knows what it's like to have needling blood flowing through your veins, what it feels like to always have to wear a perfect mask, to show just a little weakness, and everyone will trample all over it. You know that I'm not the highest scoring student this year, right? Honestly, this is the first time I've lost to anyone, but you know." The corners of her mouth suddenly curled up, as if satisfied with something. She looked up at the sky. Her face softened, and she said, "On the contrary, I feel a little relieved. But on the other hand, I'm still curious. I wonder who beat me. I want to know who they are." Kim froze, as if turning to stone. She declared resolutely, "I will crush them next time." Her words made him cough suddenly. Then he turned and questioned her. "Do you really have to go that far?" Avon shouted, "It's a matter of honor." I begged him to tell me more, but he said that person wasn't even in my class. They even dared to break the oath. How can I live with being second best? Then she calmed down and laughed, saying to me, "Gosh, why am I telling a stranger all this?" Kim also wondered, "Why are you telling me this?" Ab tilted her head and replied bluntly, "Because you look weak." Then she continued to ramble on. "The motto of my family is to be resolute with the strong and compassionate with the weak. Everyone in my class is so good at what they do, so I don't have any friends." He thought to himself. That's why the main character feels so isolated. Then she stretched and said, "I think that's enough for tonight." He coldly replied, "Goodbye." Avon was silent for a long time, then abruptly stood up and shouted in frustration, "Hey, are you going to tell me your name or—" Before he could finish, Kim interrupted him. "No," she said, her annoyance growing. "Why?" The next day, in a spacious and elegant classroom, he sat diligently in his assigned seat. Life at the academy is more peaceful than I thought. Chloe quickly made friends with others and fit right in with the class. Meanwhile, he had to busy himself avoiding eye contact and running into him. In case he made eye contact with him, his new friend would look at him with icy eyes. At that moment, someone behind Louis scoffed. "Special student? That's hilarious." Jean continued to think, but he couldn't just ignore that contemptuous look, like it was nothing. Besides, Jean wasn't the only special student. In this tiger class, there weren't many like him, but they were very hesitant to interact with others. It must be because those guys had delusions of grandeur. He glanced to the side, thinking to himself, if that's the case, then it's a good thing Jean wasn't in a higher class, because right now was the time when the spirit class and dragon class were vying for power. He continued to think. He used to think of them as a bunch of clowns when he was playing before. If Jean were in that class now, your head's gonna explode. Kim brought out something. At least now you can eat and sleep like a king. What's for dinner tonight? You remember what the media used to say, that a top student like you should have received this treatment sooner. Sorry to keep you waiting. Then subtly pulled out a faculty ID card. Jia Jian thought emotionally, even bowing 3 times a day to the principal wouldn't be enough to express this gratitude. So he looked up to the sky and silently offered a minute of thanks. Thank you so much. A playful smile spread across his lips. Great, you've fulfilled your duty as a student, haven't you? Kim didn't really change the plot too much. So, just live like this for the remaining 3 years. If it goes on like this, Kim laughed out loud. You can live the life you desire in the future. Then, early that morning, the atmosphere was fresh in the solemn space. The professor's voice droned unsteadily. 700 years ago, after the first great human-demon war, the hero Joaquin Baller recognized the need to cultivate a new generation of heroes. He then established this academy with 7 principles. The old professor continued, these lines will be on the test, so remember to study this information carefully. Kim was dozing off. His eyes glazed over as he thought to himself, this is all stuff I know by heart. The founding hero Juin Baller, in 25 battles against the commander of the First Legion, and the right-hand man of the Demon King, Lan Kan. He fought and was victorious. However, just as 2 beams of intense light collided, like 2 powerful missiles, creating an explosion that shook the heavens and earth, Jaguin lost an arm and could no longer fight. Screams of terror echoed everywhere. They could be heard from anywhere. It was a bloody and devastating war that raged on. It seemed there would be no victor. Fortunately, humanity and the demons reached a truce, and the hero Juin founded this academy to nurture the next generation of talent. The professor on the podium continued his lecture, and so, the first human-demon war led to the signing of a non-aggression pact between the 2 sides, ushering in an era of 700 years of peace. Down below, 2 students whispered to each other, I wonder if there will be another war in my lifetime. A war in the 21st century. Here I am, worrying about what to wear to a party tomorrow. Kim thought to himself, his eyes glazed over. 700 years of peace. You're the only one who knows about the first crack in this era of peace. Everyone's grown so used to this tranquility. He recalled the image of Medea. Kim desperately wanted to tell the headmaster what was happening, but he didn't know what the consequences of doing so would be. Suddenly, Kim froze. Although she hadn't hidden her intention to resign as headmaster as soon as possible, she had said, should she abandon this resignation? Medea was the first one who noticed the anomaly. Thanks to the poet laureate and she was also the first among the 7 great heroes to stand up and protect the students. I haven't played that level much. Kim remembered the moment she, with a gaping hole in her stomach, felt pity, but he truly respected her. She was the first to fall in the battle against the Demon King. When Kim reached that level, he paused for a long time. His eyes widened, his voice filled with disbelief. She had died, again, in reality. He remained silent, speechless, but in his heart he wished he hadn't known. The professor dismissed the students. That's all for today. Remember to study hard for the test in 2 weeks. They replied, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Then, they erupted in noisy chatter. Awesome. What? Really? What happened? What is it? A curious student asked. What's going on? I'm coming too. Making Kim glance over. What's happening? A gasp made him suddenly remember. Him? Is that him? He checked the date on his phone. May 5th. Right, today's the day. Curious students crowded in front of the main entrance. He wouldn't be in our class, right? Of course not. He's obviously going to the advanced class. Kim tried to squeeze through the crowd for a better look. If he remembered correctly, the crowd erupted in excited chatter. Oh my God! Is it really him? Sudden realization dawned on him. May 5th, his enrollment date. The main character of this world, a handsome young man, was walking in, and it was Leon Van VH. And the 700 years of peace will see its first crack. Kim looked at Leon and sighed inwardly. What a nuisance. He looks so annoying. Like I said, every woman in this game will fall for him. He frowned, continuing his thought. If this were a game for adults, it might actually be good. Leon probably would have died before even fighting the Demon King. Plus, all the girls who fell for him. Rachel Demura, the Saint Seikyoyo's granddaughter. The Holy Princess Aben Vani Belung, the Sword Emperor's granddaughter. Every main character was impressed by him. The more he thought, the more irritated Kim became. Damn it, but that blessed miracle's main character, Leon Vanvanhout, will be one of the first to train. For the next 3 years. He gritted his teeth in frustration. Honestly, training is putting it lightly. I refuse to go through that a second time. It's no different than being forced into military service. By the way, even the flower of mana, Kim could only seal a legion commander. Just how powerful is the Demon King then? Impossible. Is this story so absurd that even the main character will lose? Leon was smiling with his classmates. Suddenly, he felt a gaze fixed upon him. He immediately turned around. His eyes locked directly onto where Kim was standing. He gave a slight, friendly smile, but that made Kim freeze for a moment. He watched them leave, lost in thought. Right? He was talking about the blessing miracle. The main character will figure it out. He rubbed his chin, thinking, he has such a trustworthy face. When did I get convinced? He wondered. Suddenly, someone called out to him. The voice caught his attention, making him spin around. Later that evening, at the training grounds, Jean was gripping a wooden sword, swinging it up and down. After a while, he exhaled as if expecting something. If you don't meet the standards, then the blessing will be executed, he said to himself. A certain level of swordsmanship is required. He remembered that morning when Chloe appeared and timidly asked, did I do something wrong? Jean chuckled wryly, thinking, I almost lost my head. He wanted to say that. But we still have to study together for a few years. Then he said, it's nothing. She asked nervously, really? He replied, yeah. I have to maintain the peace here. I shouldn't make unnecessary enemies. Louis breathed a sigh of relief. Thank goodness, he thought. What is his true personality? He can still wield a sword while unconscious. A mud-caked sword at that. A sword that seems to be crying out for some reason, but it's still overflowing with killing intent. If he intends to kill someone, he might be even more dangerous than the Mao brothers. She stammered, that, Doma, if you're free, maybe I could treat you to dinner? Then, blushing, I just want to thank you. Of course, I'm not as good at cooking as you are. Kim froze, his mind filled with unfortunate thoughts of dinner. He suddenly saw her eyes sparkling with anticipation. But to him it was a rather worrying look. Refusing would be strange. But if he agreed, he might end up in a body bag tomorrow. Suddenly he realized something. Right, he said. This might sound a bit odd, Louis. But, instead of dinner, could you help me with something? She wondered. Help you? How? He replied. I can't think of anyone else but you. Close's cheeks flushed crimson. What am I? Kim rubbed her head shyly and replied, could you teach me swordsmanship? He gripped his sword, lost in thought. I suppose I do need a swordsmanship student. It's a good excuse, anyway. Lewis had been incredibly strong ever since that day. Every night before bed, the only thing Kim watched was him. You need to survive. Seems somewhat useful. Lewis suddenly called out, Yuma, when did you get here? I was waiting over there. He calmly replied to Lewis. I just arrived. What about you? She excitedly said, I just got here too. Suspicious. Kim asked, what time? She answered, 6:30. He broke out in a sweat. We agreed on 8 o'clock, right? Lewis chuckled, rubbing his head. Kim turned serious again. Right, but, noticing his gaze, she looked around and asked, what's wrong? He shook his head. Nothing. Kim didn't notice because he always wears his uniform, she thought. But now, I can see his abs and muscles. Now I understand why he's so strong. He's kind of cute, though. Kim forced a smile, thinking, how admirable. He held out a staff. Here, take this. Chloe took it, puzzled. I thought we'd be using real swords. Panicked, he thought, what did she just say? Who would train with real swords? It's not a life or death battle. Flustered, he explained, it's just practice. We should use wooden swords. To avoid injury, she rubbed her head, chuckled, and then realized, before lowering her head. Her face darkened, but the corners of her mouth curled up into a slight smile, so kind it gave him goosebumps. She held the staff in her hand, her gaze fixed for a few seconds. Then, she swung it down gently. A strong gust of wind swept through the area, making him almost wet himself. Just how strong is she? It sounded like the air itself was being sliced apart. Jiam immediately took a defensive stance. He needed to be cautious. Finally, the blessing. He activated the system. Sword God's blessing. If injured, the effect will be lost. Physical level 2 years. Sword parameters have been relaxed. Mental level 3. Actions are not yet decisive. Weapon level 1. Requirements not yet met. Synchronization rate 2%. Can only be activated when the sword's width is less than 35 centimeters and its length is less than 8 centimeters. He thought to himself, let's double check this. The sword's parameters are still good. Physical growth is also stable. But is a common blessing like this enough? Although common blessings increase skill levels, do they have any additional effects? I don't remember these things very well. Jean remained silent, lost in his thoughts. But what are the requirements? But what are the actual requirements? He muttered. Lewis hesitantly called out, is something troubling you? He suddenly realized he had forgotten about her. Sorry. Then he thought, it seems only Jean can see this. I must look like a fool. Jim chuckled softly. It's your first day, so go easy on me, okay? She confidently replied, sure. He then grabbed a staff in his hand. Well then, his determined eyes signaled, let the match begin. Suddenly, silence fell over the space. His face turned serious. All his previous life, Jean had lived by the motto, trust only what you see. To become a master in any field, shedding blood and sweat wasn't enough. One had to be willing to reshape their entire being. Jin's quick adaptation to the academy was also a product of what he had learned in his youth. Just then, Lewis's entire body glowed crimson. Jin closed his eyes, feeling the sweat dripping from his hands. His stance was awkward. Then he slowly opened his eyes. But the essence of swordsmanship was to accurately target the opponent. She lunged forward like a storm. The magic-imbued staff blazed brightly, illuminating the space. Startled, he remained frozen, waiting. Suddenly, the staff, like lightning, swung straight towards him, causing him to wince. Too fast, she struck, the staff whizzing past his face, just millimeters away from sending him flying. Jiam trembled, his cheek twitching. He'd said easy, but Lewis dropped the staff, then spun, grabbing him with her free hand and lunging forward. A loud crash echoed. With a single swing, she sent his arm flying upwards. Jiam's whole body shook. It was too powerful. He tried to regain his composure, but he managed to block it. He'd be slammed down like this. The thought barely formed. When he looked up, Lewis was already airborne. Since when? Jiam gritted his teeth, thinking, damn it, she was even faster. Was that last move just a feint? She slashed downwards. He braced himself against the terrifying force. The two staffs collided with a loud crack. The needle was pushed back, but he just kept attacking relentlessly. Right in front of him, Lewis rapidly changed his moves and stances, shifting positions for more effective strikes. He gritted his teeth, sweat pouring down like rain. Each blow felt like a thunderclap. One hit would mean instant death. The needle was nearing its limit. There would be no chance to counterattack. Suddenly, the wooden stick he held in his hand snapped in two from the immense pressure. Lewis stammered, "I'm sorry. I meant to go easy, but I broke it." Her eyes widened as she softly called out, "Yuma!" Just then, she gasped, her pupils contracting as she saw the sword. He stood amidst a circle of blue magic. System messages flashed repeatedly. Weapon used does not meet requirements. Weapon damaged. Error occurred. Initiating forced override, gradually reducing humanity. Sword God's blessing, thermal activation. A terrifying killing intent blazed in his eyes. Sensing the terrifying aura, Lewis leaped back. The system announced that the weapon activation conditions were met. Warning, weapon malfunction detected. She stared blankly, a wary expression on her face, looking directly at Jean. Initiating forced self-adjustment. He stood solemnly in the middle of the space. A surge of magical power coursed through his body. His humanity was fading. His eyes widened, pupils contracting. Sword God's blessing. Jin's original self stood in a stark white room. "Jean, where is this?" Around him were chef's tools. "Jean, a kitchen? Was all that time just a dream?" A fish lay on the cutting board. "Jean, yes, you're prepping the fish." Jean back to work. Sharp knives appeared. "Jean, it's been so long. Shouldn't you pick up the chef's knife again?" A red system screen appeared. "You can't select this item, Jean." "What? I can't select it, Jean?" "Then choose this knife." "It says error, cannot select this item, Jean." "I can't? Not this one either." "Don't worry about it. Just keep doing what you're doing, Jean." "So the only knife left is the sashimi knife." "That's right, just choose it, Jean." "Even so, holding this sashimi knife must hurt." "Your hand. Grip the knife tightly." "Is it still like that, Jean? That's strange." "Doesn't hurt at all, Jean." "On the contrary, it feels exhilarating." "Right, that's it. Keep going, leave it to me." Pale white hand. "Uses crimson strings to control you, Jean." "Alright, today I'm going to create a masterpiece for the ages." "Activate heat." A beam of light from above descends directly onto Jean. His face hardened, his eyes filled with a murderous intent. "Close up." Chloe looked on in stunned silence. "Are you alright, Yuma?" she asked, concerned. Her words seemed to have no effect on him. His entire body swayed erratically, turning this way and that. Then, like a bolt of lightning across the sky, he lunged forward without hesitation or thought. In a split second, Yuma stood before Chloe. Their staffs clashed violently once more. She struggled to hold her ground, waiting, but the pressure on her legs was too great. She lost her balance. Without mercy, he sent her flying. She was thrown back a considerable distance, crashing into the wall behind her. Chloe coughed up blood. She gritted her teeth, thinking, he's like a completely different person. Yuma showed no mercy. He lunged forward once more, slashing downward. Luckily, Lewis dodged quickly, saving his life. His eyes glowed brightly, devoid of any awareness. She pushed herself up with her staff, thinking that last attack had sent her flying. Chloe clutched her chest, struggling to get up. It hurt so much. What happened to Yuma? She didn't understand what was going on. She had to stop this fight immediately. Lewis strained his voice. Yuma, I need to stop this fight. But you... He seemed to no longer hear what she was saying. All that was in his mind now was fighting. He charged. She saw him and felt a pang of despair. It's too late, Yuma, Chloe pleaded. Snap out of it, Yuma. He swung his fist as she screamed as loud as she could. Yuma! Then, something strange started to happen in his subconscious. What's happening? The fish on the cutting board keeps flopping. Kim, why does it keep slipping? Have you never seen a fish like this before? It's dodging you. Quick! Kim, this is troublesome. You have to take care of it quickly. But the sound, it's like it's speaking. Kim, you're imagining things. Why are you listening to the sounds the fish is making and mumbling along? Doma, the knife in your hand reflects your image. Yuma, yes, that's you. The call of Yuma is helping you come back to yourself, no longer controlled by the red strings. Your eyes glance down at the cutting board. So that's it, the call rings out again. Yuma, that's Luoi trying to wake you up. Yuma, wake up, now you've realized the clue. A bright light is slowly consuming, Your subconscious. Only the sound calling Yuma remains. Come back to reality. The staff slipped from his grasp, clattering against the wall behind them. Silence hung heavy in the air as they stood frozen, facing each other. He had regained his senses, recognizing himself once more, while she, terrified, was on the verge of tears. She cautiously opened her eyes, assessing the situation. Now Yuma seemed back to normal. He placed a hand on her waist and spoke. "Let's call it a day." His action made her blush crimson. She thought to herself, "How gentle." Then, flustered, she asked, "Are you all right, Yuma?" He smiled, turning to leave. "Thanks for the practice. I'll be going now." He walked away, leaving Chloe standing there, dumbfounded. That evening, she walked alone, lost in thought. Ever since the class representative test, Yuma's skills were more than just brute strength, but also a strange feeling. Not just skill but instinct too. She recalled the moment just now. Even without using her blessing, she was still no match for him. And that too. Her wooden sword broken in two. Lost in thought, she knew he was strong. But then a figure suddenly appeared. "Looking like you enjoyed that, huh?" Hearing that voice, she frowned in annoyance. It was Noxadora, a second year. He called her name Loey. She hesitantly called him Nox, a hint of sarcasm in her voice. "Fawning over lowlifes. Is that all you do after entering the academy?" Chloe angrily demanded. "Don't talk about Yuma like that," he questioned. "So that commoner's name is Yuma? If you keep associating with that kind, then the editor's family will eliminate it." Hearing that, she displayed a murderous look in her eyes, staring directly at her opponent. Then, she closed her eyes and bowed her head. She resolutely turned around and replied bluntly, "Even if the entire editor's family were to come, they wouldn't be able to do anything. Where's Yuma?" Block silently watched her leave, then softly called out to Yuma, "Over here." He was still lost in his own turbulent thoughts. After what had just happened, Jean needed to clarify one thing. The power he was bestowed with was not a blessing or a gift. It was more of a curse. To avoid relying on the sword god's blessing, Jean needed to find new equipment. But that power seemed to despise all his efforts. "It's clinging to me, trying to take over my body." "Kim, don't you feel any pain?" "Not only do I not feel pain, but there's a hint of pleasure. With this endless feeling of weakness, I'm like a puppet, strung up, submitting to the curse, manipulated by it and the sweet whispers in my ear. Kim is no longer conscious. Cut deeper, deeper, destroy more. More. He's drowning in the red threads, letting them lead him freely. He has completely surrendered himself to it." He remembers the moment from before. Then, Kulki's scream, filled with despair, the name that jolted him awake. Roma. In that cry, all the shattered pieces of the world were gathered. So Kim threw away the sword, as if it had been fused to his flesh. Kim felt like if he didn't throw it away immediately, he'll lose himself forever. Up until now, he was just an Eander who wanted to kill him. Lewis, the girl who brought him back to his senses. Even though he was the one who broke the sword and caused the problem, despite his anger, Jean felt grateful. So he decided to let it all go. Even so, Jean had to leave quickly, to avoid another outburst. But could he really avoid this problem? A lifetime without the sword god's blessing. A talent that felt like a curse. Paid for with a human lifespan. Jean, his body emaciated, his eyes vacant. That was the burden of his talent. Like an alien living in this world. Inside the large building, outside, lightning illuminated the night sky. Jean thought to himself he didn't dream of much here. He dragged himself up the stairs, step by step. His eyes were dull and filled with exhaustion. Jean just wanted to live a normal life. He thought he could handle minor incidents, if they happened. Suddenly, hands with grotesque, gaping maws appeared. But now Jean realized, as they lunged down trying to crush him in their grip, that there was something inside him, something devouring. Choose your reason. This isn't a blessing. It's a curse that wants to swallow Kim whole. Defying the time spell, 3 days passed. Class was in session in the grand hall. A classmate, beaming, spoke up. "Something crazy happened yesterday. I'll show you." Chloe replied, "Really? I'll have to look into that later." She suddenly fell silent. Her eyes held an unspoken something. It turned out she was staring at an empty seat below. Kim's seat. Chloe pondered. Now she noticed. She didn't even have his contact information. Why hadn't she asked before? Lewis had even gone to his dorm room, but the only response to her knock was a pained groan. I was afraid if I broke in, he'll hate me, so I can only leave. Lewis frowned sadly. She liked to watch him from afar, when he was resting his chin in his hand, lost in thought. Chloe was afraid he'd think she was a nuisance, so she carefully avoided talking to him. At first, Lewis thought she was attracted to him because he risked his life to save her. But Lewis revealed his true feelings. Maybe that was just an excuse. She missed him the next day. Now, at the grand, spacious school, someone yelled for order. World Pink stood on the podium, irritated, her voice sharp. Everyone, quiet. How long have you been studying and you're still acting like a marketplace? Because it's raining today, we'll have class indoors instead of training. Seems Gang Juma isn't here today either. He frowned, thinking there must be a reason. So he would wait patiently, like a true teacher. A while later, Wonbin announced the start of the lesson. The class responded in unison, "Yes, sir." Suddenly, a loud noise erupted, annoying Gunbin, causing him to yell, "Who dares to interrupt my class?" Suddenly, his eyes widened as he looked up. A figure descended from above, each footstep echoing on the stairs. The person was Kim. His eyes were ice cold, his expression indifferent. He showed no emotion, just calmly walking down. Chloe, seeing him, jumped up and shouted, "Yuma!" He spoke in a low, short voice. "I apologize for being late, sir." Seeing this, even Wonbin was wary. He stammered, "All right, sit down." The students who witnessed it whispered to each other, "Isn't he some kind of special student? Does he always look like that? Does he always look so intense?" "He looks more handsome now. Now that you mention it." The moment Kim appeared, the room fell silent. He sat quietly in his seat, his eyes dark and chillingly cold. Class dismissed. The students rushed out for break. "Let's go eat."
I'm starving.
Lewis hesitantly approached, softly calling out, "Yoma!" Chloe replied, "What happened? You seem troubled." "It's nothing," he said. Lewis continued, "It's been a while since you've been to class. So, I thought something must have happened. Was it because of that fight?" Kim was silent for a moment, then turned and offered a small, reassuring smile. "I was just a little under the weather. Thanks for worrying about me." She seemed touched, her eyes wide and cheeks flushed. Then she shyly said, "Really? Good," he thought to himself. "I didn't think she'd believe me." Jean recalled the past 3 days. He had endured excruciating symptoms, until he was completely exhausted. Jean couldn't even leave his room to eat. He was bedridden, praying for this nightmare to end soon. The pain that Jean had to endure was far greater than anything he had experienced before. It was the price he paid for using the broken sword. But that wasn't the only thing that happened. When he looked in the mirror, he looked the same on the outside, but his face was gaunt, and even his hair had turned white. Jean was horrified by this despair. This was divine punishment. Back to reality. Chloe looked at Kim, who was looking down, and thought to herself, "He seems to feel guilty. Well, it's understandable. He saw me like that back at the training grounds. I need to change the subject." Suddenly, he spoke up. "About that dinner you mentioned earlier. Would tonight be okay?" She froze for a moment. Then, she suddenly became excited. Her cheeks flushed crimson. "Really? Dinner?" he continued. "But this time I want to eat your cooking." Lewis's face lit up. He jumped up excitedly. "Of course. I'll do my best. I'm so happy." Kim smiled slightly, thinking, he must really like her. Lewis excitedly asked Yuma, "Tonight, I'll make anything you want. What do you want to eat?" "You took long enough to answer. I'm not eating fish. Last time at your place I threw up everything. It was too expensive, so I didn't." Suddenly, a sharp glint flashed by. Startling Kim, he turned his head. But there was only a potted plant. "What the heck?" He then turned towards the front door. Chloe, curious, peeked to see what was going on. Turned out to be Knox standing there. His eyes were wide with terror, a horrifying expression on his face. She was startled by the sight. Kim asked if he knew him. Silence fell once more. He stepped forward, seeking answers himself. As their eyes met, Kim bluntly told him to speak if he had something to say. "Stop staring." Knox's eyes glowed crimson. He wondered what was wrong with his eyes. Suddenly, Chloe rushed forward, placing herself between them and shouted, "Yuma, don't mind him. Block. Didn't I tell you to stay away? What are you doing here?" He glanced sideways, a thoughtful expression on his face. So that's how it is. His voice, sharp with annoyance, held a hint of hesitation. Trembling is more like it. Knox said coldly, he's nothing. You're actually breaking auditor rules for him, Glow. Auditor this, auditor that. I don't care anymore, she shouted furiously. It has nothing to do with me. He's your own flesh and blood. How can you say that? Once an auditor, always an auditor. Kim said sternly, you're talking like a rebel, and you sound like you're in a historical drama. Keep your voice down. Block's voice was almost a command. Drop this and go home. Chloe bit her lip until it bled. Don't. Then she yelled, don't you dare talk to me like that. He thought, can't we just talk calmly? Everyone, let's go eat. This is getting chaotic. You're used to this kind of thing, right? Wait, Auditor Kim understands now. You just remember, they specialize in infiltration and assassination. They're the shadows that appear mid-game. They're weaker than other hero families. But when it comes to assassination, they're unmatched. All members of the Auditor family are ridiculously strong. It's because they're forced to undergo harsh training, turning them into the most ruthless killing machines. Growing up, Lewis was born into the Auditor family. Kim rubbed his chin, thinking, damn, if that's the case, then what's normal and abnormal? Wouldn't that expression be more normal? A blank face when killing. No expression, already used to it. He's definitely from the Auditor family, chasing down an enemy to solidify their position. If it's urgent, Kim wouldn't hesitate to kill either. That makes sense, he thought. Glancing at Chloe, who was trembling slightly, he guessed. Chloe probably wanted a normal life. However, just like the blessed sword, Chloe had grown up in the Auditor's environment since childhood, so it was definitely impossible. She was destined to become a cold-blooded killer. Unfortunately, he wasn't a hero. He couldn't be a hero even if he wanted to, although, suddenly, a smirk played on Kim's lips. What the hell am I doing? He muttered to himself. He couldn't save the world, he knew, but saving one person, one girl, maybe he could do that. He stepped forward. I'll talk to him. Kim thought again. He had to admit this power was definitely a curse, but it wouldn't let him taste defeat. System announcement. The Lord be with you. Kim asked his name. Noxa didn't answer, only nodded. He thought to himself, no matter how hard he tries to escape the divine cursed sword's blessing, it won't work. In the cartoon, they would say, you can't escape even if you run to the heavens. True enough, Kim resolutely stepped forward. If he can't run, he'll charge forward.
Yam Jomma.
My name is a combination of geometry, sword, and demon, and I am a swordsman. He moved outside, not forgetting to tell him, follow me, I will cut you into pieces. At One Beyond's office, he sat in silent contemplation. He recalled the recent events and was certain something must have happened to John Ma. His face was completely expressionless. Assistant Kim suddenly burst through the door. Senior, is something the matter? Your head's almost poking me. One Bin furrows his brow. I told you not to joke about my poking habit. Ta lets out a chuckle. Sorry. Suddenly, a phone rings. He answers. This is Lee Wonbin, instructor from the HoCap class. What is it? Assistant Kim is still amusedly pondering. So he was poking from the very beginning? How cute. He suddenly gasps in shock. Subspace. Why suddenly? Which student requested an opponent? Who is it? The caller informs him. It's Gang Juman. He requested Black Auditor as his opponent. Wonbin exclaims in astonishment. What the? A door slowly slides open. Above, a timer displays the countdown for the match. Kim sits inside, lost in thought. There's 15 minutes until the subspace match. He thought the procedures would be more complicated, but it turned out to be so simple. He remembered what the media had said. If you absolutely have to do it, be careful. He thought to himself. Anyway, this is outside the scope of reality's interference, so I shouldn't get any external injuries. But mental trauma is unavoidable. Kim muttered to himself. Winning is all that matters. The noise reached even the waiting room. Everyone knows watching a fight is exciting, but he didn't expect this much of a reaction. Kim sighed. He's strange. Not long ago he was trying to avoid attention, but now, it's all pointless. Suddenly, he noticed close sobbing beside Geometry Megan. He was sweating bullets. It seems like he blames himself. Then he reassured Cluia. It's not your fault. Don't worry. Kim held up a kitchen knife excitedly and said, "Lewis even lent me a weapon, so it'll probably be fine." A sudden silence fell over them. She spoke with intense conviction. "You said Lewis was strong too." She exclaimed loudly, "My brother is a genius. He possesses a talent unique in our family's history. An auditor. No one can match him in the use of hidden weapons. At 54 years old, he's been called the pinnacle of night technique." Kim thought to himself, "The pinnacle of night technique? What are these two talking about? Who even came up with that name?" He looked at the knife in his right hand, then thought, come to think of it, it's always like this. No matter how hard he tries to avoid it, in the end he must choose this path. His fate is to wield a sword his entire life. He probably never expected that in this second life he'd be messing around with Sashimi again. Just then, an announcement echoed. Subspace pairing will now commence. Related students, please proceed to the I believe this should be arena instead of ethnic group/nation. Dan talked. Jean stood up abruptly and said, "I'll be going now." Chloe, behind him, only let out a soft sound. She remained silent, her expression troubled. He turned his head slightly and called out, "Chloe." She looked up quizzically. He spoke softly, "There are many geniuses in this world." His hand gripped a sharp knife tightly. But by the end, she was completely dumbfounded. Jean waved his hand, flashed a confident smile and said, "I will be the victor." A bright door in the distance gradually grew larger from his perspective, and in a flash it was right before his eyes. He shielded his eyes from the blinding light. Before Jean stood a packed stadium. The crowd roared with excitement. "I put my faith in you, special student. Give it your all." Holy crap. Honestly, I've been looking forward to this fight for a long time. You're giving a forced smile, like a Roman gladiator from the old days. I didn't expect this many people. Suddenly, he noticed a section high up in the stands. Jean was a bit surprised. Oh, the Saint class was also present. Up there were the four, Saki, Rachel, Leon, and Avon. She frowned, looking down below. He stood silently in the arena, lost in thought. Getting cold feet? So tense. Suddenly, a voice snapped him out of it. He turned. It was Block with that deadly stare. "You commoner. Are you kidding me, you? Commoners can't distinguish between bravery and arrogance. How dare you wield such a cheap weapon?" A powerful wave of killing intent surged forward, threatening to consume him. Jean furrowed his brows. This guy's insane. That murderous aura is terrifying. He let out a laugh, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "A true master doesn't blame his equipment." The man raged. "You bastard." He then closed his eyes and declared, "First, I'll tear out your insolent tongue. Retract your words." He drew a long sword, pulsing with magical energy. The corner of his mouth twitched upwards. "Look at that. Not bad. Those are the famed Hungarian blades, and two of them at that, even coated in a protective layer, concealing top-tier chi, a masterpiece of Black Crow's grace." Jean thought to himself, sensing that the earlier killing intent had been suppressed. Faced with this invisible threat, he remained completely undeterred. S-rank weapons. Sounds laughable, but I'm serious too. While in his hand was only a Daiso fit knife Sashimi, bigly fruit-peeling knife of unknown origin. The two stood facing each other. An announcer's voice boomed, "Now, activating the barrier." Their eyes locked, sharp and piercing, like rival warriors. Palpable tension filled the air. The space just mentioned had four people, the Saint class and close, all curiously watching. Block summoned Guardian's Grace. Upon hearing the command, both sides lunged forward with lightning speed. As the Guardian finished speaking, the distance between them rapidly closed. A system notification appeared. Painless Blessing activated. Sword God's Blessing activated. Kim charged forward, knife gripped tightly. Grace of the Guardian Deity. The students watching the fight furrowed their brows in confusion. What was that? Did you see that? He grimaced. Gradually, everyone grew restless, complaining they couldn't see anything. This is a high-level match, it's too fast. Isn't this supposed to be a fight between rookies? The two charged at each other, clashing fiercely. Their speed was like lightning, making it hard for anyone to follow. Rachel chuckled in amazement. They're pretty fast, aren't they? This is interesting. Nobel was visibly annoyed. How could that frail-looking guy fight like that? Below, Kim parried Beak's attack with a swift slash. He attacked relentlessly, but the boy blocked every strike. Nox gripped his sword tightly and slammed it into the ground. Then, he unleashed a flurry of lightning-fast attacks. 2 diagonal slashes marked the ground where the blows landed. He's getting frustrated, isn't he? That bastard. Let's see if you can dodge this. He then darted forward. A bright surge of magical power erupted. Nox moved diagonally 3 steps, leaving Kim utterly stunned. Countless magic thorns erupted from the ground, enveloping him completely. Suddenly, Jean was surrounded by countless illusions of block. Then, his entire body transformed into a projection, and vanished into thin air. It made him jolt in surprise. In a split second, he had escaped the Matrix. Nox was astonished. He dodged that too? Jin's eyes turned icy cold as he glanced back, as if looking at a clown. The clueless students commented, "I can barely see anything. But it looks like the second-year student has the upper hand. That first year is just running away, as expected of a second year. A year's worth of experience makes a difference." But Avon understood the situation. No one who could see would misunderstand. It was true that the second year was relentlessly attacking, but that guy was dodging every single blow. It seemed like he didn't want to fight. Block gritted his teeth in fury, just as Lewis predicted. He's not some pushover. I used the Black Crow's favor to ensure his destruction, yet he evaded it so easily. He's damn near invincible. Look at the approaching needle and think. He's focusing too much on speed. Having seen his strength, we need to be more cautious. We need a powerful attack. Something that can wipe out a wide area. The more I look, the angrier I get. Using that cheap kitchen knife, suddenly he dropped his weapon, leaving Block bewildered. Tossing aside his weapon in the middle of the fight and then speaking, "What trick is he trying to pull?" Kim gripped the handle with both hands, then assumed a fighting stance. The battle intensified, the tension thick in the air. His eyes narrowed sharply, but Nox was furious. He thought, "This damn bastard. How dare he mock me with that stance?" He then cursed, "You low-born, rootless peasant, making a fool of me." Nox's hand tightened around his sword. A murderous aura radiated from him once more. He looked like a demon straight from hell. "I'll kill you with a single blow." Nox's eyes glowed crimson before the blood-soaked Hungarian blade. At that moment, Jean lunged forward like a flash of lightning. Across the sky, while Nox was still boasting about his luck, Jean executed his own technique, paying no mind to those meaningless words. Jin's mind was filled with a whirlwind of chaotic thoughts. "I just want to live a peaceful life," he thought. "Don't attract attention, just follow the main storyline. This is the worst kind of curse. It always chases me and tries to control my body." But something within his body was trying to devour Jean. What can he do if escape is impossible? May the grace of the guardian deity protect him. Then let him cut them all down now. One of Block's arms has been severed from his body. Even Block himself is stunned into disbelief, completely unable to see anything. Kim is like a lightning bolt flashing by, so fast that no one can easily keep up. His entire body glows brightly. His hand grips the knife tightly. The students watching the match are speechless and wide-eyed. Even Leon is at a loss for words. In the stands, 2 figures are frozen. Kim's eyes are filled with blood-red streaks. Whether it's a blessing or a curse, I accept it all. Farewell to my peaceful future. The arm lies scattered on the ground, the panic still etched. On Block's face, streaks of light flash past from somewhere. All they could see was Block Auditor, his face hidden behind a mask, covering his mouth and nose completely. He was straining, trying to endure something excruciating. His eyes were wide, bloodshot, bulging from their sockets. Suddenly, a beam of light flashed across his neck, severing his head from his body. A single phrase materialized in the air. Spatial shield activated. Before them was an arena. A fierce battle raged within. The spectators in the stands furrowed their brows. Unease etched on their faces as they watched intently. Down in the arena, Block Auditor collapsed, seemingly exhausted. On the other side stood a handsome young man named Jim, slowly sheathing his knife. As the knife clicked into place, a bright light erupted. Aben and Jadal watched, eyes wide with shock. Smoke billowed in the center of the arena. He looked imposing and majestic. One hand casually tucked into his pocket. A knife in hand. The announcement blared once more. The subspace battle has ended. He looked up, scratching his ear playfully. Was that reaction natural enough? There's no turning back now. Suddenly, his gaze sharpened, focusing intently. He thought, this is a knife for gutting fish. His stare was fixed on his own knife. A knife with a faint pattern near the hilt. The thoughts kept flooding back. Putting someone away always left him with an unbearable unease. He glanced behind him. At Auditor, collapsed and trembling. His only comfort was knowing both his brothers, Mao and Block, were still in subspace. The subspace function was clear. Block's eyes widened in terror, his body shaking violently. Sweat poured off him like rain. A loud block resounded. He tilted his head, thinking, he's really strong, just like Klo said. It feels like he's had a lot of battle experience before this. But deep in his eyes, there was a hint of worry. Kim observed. However, if he flaunts his strength like that, anyone would want to avoid him. I've seen it all. But consider it his blessing. A loud voice boomed from the arena speakers. Victory belongs to the first-year class. The scoreboard lit up. Winner, Kangyama. Time, 26 seconds. The name Ganjiyama echoed. A wave of chatter erupted from the surrounding crowd. That's the special first-year student. He even defeated the second-year, Ganjiyama. Faced with such praise, he just stood there, lost in thought. Are they seriously advertising themselves everywhere? He lowered his head, a smug smile playing on his lips. There's nothing I can do now. This is the path I've chosen. He slowly walked away from the arena. I have to risk it all and follow him. Noise erupted in the classroom hallway. That guy's from Auditor? Are you talking about yesterday's match? No wonder he's so strong. Two people chatted animatedly. Their conversation was filled with excitement. But if he's that strong, how did he lose his gun? Sitting in the middle of the classroom, the two continued their heated discussion. Their voices were loud enough to be heard outside. Meanwhile, a girl named Nobel rested her chin on her hand, gazing into the distance, deep in thought. Kongjuma, huh? She stared blankly out the window, lost in thought. Her mind raced, still grappling with everything. Everywhere she went, his name echoed in her ears. It was hard to believe, but the memory was vivid. The brutal clash between Kim and Nox. He severed Nox's arm, seized his sword and sent it plummeting to the ground. Blood gushed forth. Realization dawned on her. Her eyes widened, comprehending the moment. From then on, her pupils constricted. She felt as if she could no longer see clearly. Each slash blurred before her eyes. Perhaps she was reliving it in her mind. His swordsmanship was unbelievable. She could only see Kim's two knives crisscrossing. The thought struck her, and he fought with mere kitchen knives. She pondered deeply. As the Emperor's granddaughter, she was supremely confident when it came to swordsmanship. I wasn't thinking clearly. How could a sword be that powerful? Suddenly, something flashed through her mind, startled her, and she gasped. Abiam recalled their conversation. They sat together on a long wooden bench. But I'm quite curious, she thought to herself. Who was the one who defeated me to become the top student? If I ever see him again, I'll definitely take him down. She turned her head to the side. He looked quite weak. Our family motto is to be strict with the strong and merciful to the weak. I don't know who the top student is this year. Suddenly, it hit her. Could he be the top student? She slammed her fist on the table in anger. Her face flushed crimson, her body trembling. Those thoughts kept racing through her mind. I must have been so furious back then. But he was so much stronger than me. Kongyoma, how dare he look at me like that? What is he thinking? Just from those frustrated thoughts in his head, Avon slammed her hand on the table and yelled, "What is he thinking?" The outburst startled Rachel awake. Confused, she asked, What's going on?" Realizing she'd made a commotion, Avon turned back and said, "Oh, sorry Rachel, it's nothing important." Rachel replied skeptically, "Really?" Avon simply answered, "Yeah, haven't exercised in days. So my head's a little fuzzy." Rachel looked doubtful. Come on, you're clearly hiding something." Avon glanced back defensively. "What, me?" Rachel pleaded. "Just tell me," she asked softly. "Are you hungry?"
Avon coldly replied, "No."
Rachel kept asking if she'd left something behind. Once again, Avon replied, "No." She asked again, annoyingly persistent, and Avon snapped back. "I said no already. Suddenly, Rachel blurted out, "Are you thinking about your son?" This seemed to strike a nerve with Avon. It startled her, making her visibly flinch. Nobel's face slowly turned red. Angel seemed to notice this and smirked. Then she burst out laughing. "No way, Miss Nobel has a girly side after all. I thought you didn't know what love was." Seeing Sarah's overreaction, Nobel could only respond awkwardly. "It's really not like that." Jadel's laughter rang out. "Oh really?" Then she asked directly, "Who's the handsome guy? Point him out." Avon glanced at her, embarrassed, and didn't reply. She started to guess. If you can steal Avon's heart, you're definitely not an idiot. But let's see. Her voice rang out, Leon, right? She saw a young man with blue eyes and blonde hair. He looked quite striking. She also admitted that he was indeed handsome. But looking at Avon's face, from her eyes, her lips, and her entire expression, 2 words appeared: not interested. She could sense it. Thatcher thought, strange, she doesn't seem to like Leon. Then she said, "So?" She asked again, "You're the special student from yesterday?" An image of Kim with an emotionless face flashed by. She reminded Avon. The black-haired guy seemed to have guessed Avon's thoughts correctly. She quickly turned around, startled. With a woman's intuition, she easily guessed right. A giant bingo appears on the screen. She chuckles softly to herself. Things are getting interesting. The polishing rate is pretty good today. Rachel quickly grabs Abayong's wrist and says, "Miss Abayong, let's go." She asks in surprise, "What? Where? Where are we going? You're not explaining anything." Rachel just says, "Come on, let's go, let's go." A playful glint appears in her eyes. Squeezing her hand tightly, she says, "To the Tiger class." A sign with the classroom name appears. Rachel pulls Abayong straight into the classroom and announces, "Hello, Tiger class. Can I borrow your classroom for a bit?" This causes everyone froze. Startled, all eyes turned towards the 2 of them. Murmurs and gasps rippled through the crowd. "Rachel, that's the 2nd and 4th ranker." Someone remembered her name. "Hey Ben," a voice called from behind. Embarrassed, he could only mumble, "Rachel, just walking around like that." Rachel continued striding forward, then declared, "Oh, this spot's perfect." Suddenly, she hopped right onto a desk support. Standing on the highest desk, Rachel shouted with a proud grin, "I'm looking for the guy with black hair." Her voice boomed, "Where are you, black-haired guy?" Below, a guy with blue hair and blue eyebrows looked up, his expression uneasy. "Hey, stepping on someone else's desk is going too far, you know?" Rachel confidently replied, "Because I'm pretty." She snapped her fingers, captivating him. He exclaimed, "So pretty." Over here, Avon just covers her face, and everyone else standing around is just laughing and complimenting. "So cute." Suddenly, she realizes and whispers, "I see." Her expression becomes truly comical. A red-haired girl named Roe is sitting next to Kim, who is slumped over the desk. Zero's thoughts appear. His girlfriend? She adjusts her hair and thinks, "It's not a big deal. Not bad. That works too." Yahello boldly strides past the desks, loosening his tie as he walks forward. Lewis is still laughing, eyes crinkled. Suddenly something passes by, startling her. Her smile fades as Thatcher brings her face close to Kim's. Seeing her act like this, Lewis freezes. She's stunned, speechless. Everyone was stunned by her actions. Thatcher used her breasts, pushing them forward with a suggestive wiggle, then let out a few moans. "Whoa!" The noise startled Jean awake. His eyes fluttered open, confused about what was happening. She was posing right on the table. Her eyes lit up. "Oh my God, you're awake," she exclaimed. Thatcher pointed at him. "You're Gangzuma, right?" Now sitting up, he looked completely bewildered. She continued to explain. "I saw you at the gym yesterday, but I didn't recognize you." "You mean the Thatcher? What's she doing here?" She pointed directly at his nose and said, "You're pretty handsome up close. Especially." She trailed off. Sudden thoughts flashed through his mind. A sense of danger was approaching. His instincts screamed that this was a dangerous situation. A voice echoed from somewhere. "Hey, who are you right now?" Chloe gripped Deocti's wrist tightly. Her eyes flashed with anger as she demanded an answer. Her blazing red eyes narrowed slightly. Deocti's eyes, still burning with passion, remained wide. She gave a quizzical smile, a smile that asked 1,000 questions. From afar, Kim watched the two, their gazes locked, each challenging the other. He thought to himself, "Lewis, this is the danger I sensed from her." His thoughts continued to echo in his mind. Does that mode again? Her personality has changed. Lewis slowly tilted her head to the left. Her pupils narrowed, focusing upwards. She suddenly pulled out a knife. She looked terrifying in that moment. He thought, a knife? If there's a stabbing at school. Sensing the danger, he frowned in thought. I didn't think the game would have this kind of scene. What's going on? Witnessing the event, Arbin quickly ran over, pushed the rope swing aside and said, Rachel, you're here. What are the lower class people doing? She simply replied, why, Miss Arbin, I just came to say hello, that's all. Is that not allowed? Then, she pursed her lips in a show of pity, glancing towards someone. Suddenly, Rachel stomped her foot on the ground. She reached out and patted Lewis's head. Little one, you shouldn't interrupt when adults are talking. Do you understand? And children shouldn't play with dangerous things like this. Do you understand? Hearing that, she became terrifyingly silent. Her gaze grew colder, showing extreme resentment. Rachel turned away casually and said, all right, time for the grown-ups to talk. From behind, Lewis slowly raises his knife, pulling it back as far as it will go. A streak of light emanates from the blade. Standing beside Kim and Nobel, they witness it too. Their eyes widen in surprise. From behind Rachel, something approaches rapidly. She glances back abruptly. Suddenly, a splash of bright red liquid bursts forth. For a moment, it seems like an attack. But it's just spilled juice. Two friends are loudly bickering. Hey, you spilled it. Open it carefully. The other replies, but if you didn't do that, it would be so inconsiderate. They continue arguing. Shut up. One of them yells. Beetle gently takes Loie's arm. She cries out. Beetle says sarcastically, too slow. I thought you were just an ordinary kid. But turns out you're just a narrow-minded brat. Her hand reached out and grabbed hers, making the hand filled with rage tremble uncontrollably. Frustrated groans continuously escaped her lips. From the other side, Abe furrowed his brows and yelled, Stop it, Jadal. But she didn't seem to care. She looked completely deflated. But then suddenly, she shoved Lewis hard backwards. Even Lewis was startled when she was pushed. It was strong enough to send her crashing to the floor, but no one could have predicted what happened next. Before she could hit the ground, she flipped backwards and landed softly on her feet. Everyone standing nearby cheered excitedly, while he just watched with an emotionless expression. That's insane. A holographic message appeared. The announcement board displayed a message stating that the family was renowned for possessing ultimate power, and their motto, in the face of overwhelming strength, no skill is required. The granddaughter of the merchant saint, Rachel Demora, she carries out special missions. After knocking someone away, she simply extends both arms as if preparing for action. Then she turns back and asks Jim, her voice soft, is that little girl your girlfriend? He firmly answers, no. But he thinks to himself, it's so cold, don't look, but it's true. He suddenly remembers Lewis's angry expression, still vivid in his mind. Then he speaks. Before this, Rachel responds, you're still dwelling on it. What in the world is going on? Avon's scowling face appears in his mind. The thought keeps surfacing. Look closely, even Avon is here. I was so lost in thought I didn't notice. Kim spoke first. What brings you two here to find me? Rachel answered. Lady Nobel has taken an interest in you, so I came here to see what kind of person you are. Seeing her reveal all his secrets, Nobel quickly put up her hands defensively. I would never do such a thing, she denied, but her blushing face betrayed her. Rachel countered, if that's not the case, why are you here? Avon responded passively to Rachel. You forced me to come here. And she told me that Lady Avon wanted to come, so I obediently followed. She hesitantly said, that? Whispers erupted around them. Avon suddenly shouted, see, nothing's going on. Whoa, are they arguing? Let me explain. I think you misunderstood. I didn't say I wanted to come here, but you guessed exactly what I was thinking. You knew that and still followed me? He put his hand to his head thoughtfully and said, if there's nothing else, you two should leave. Seeing his coldness, they were both stunned. Then Dochul sat down right next to him. Kim slung an arm around him and said, you're pretty interesting. I like a man with a sense of humor. He frowned and gritted his teeth, replying, luckily for you, I'm not funny in the slightest. She continued in a soft, alluring tone, don't say that. So, how about watching Netflix after school? Just then, from afar, Chloe flew into a rage and yelled. Her eyes flashed menacingly as she lunged forward and shouted, "Stay away from Yuma." This startled Dochul, who turned around and asked. Yuma burst out laughing. "You call that a friend, Yuma?" He barely got half a sentence out before she started laughing again. Jium thought it was pretty funny too. Her laughter still echoed, loud and clear. "Miss Nobel, can you hear me?" A metro announcement boomed from behind. Avon must have been truly furious by now. Thatcher just glanced back and said one word, questioningly. It forced her to turn back and say goodbye to Jium. "It was so embarrassing," she said. "It was nice to meet you." "Bye, Yuma. We'll see each other again soon," he said angrily. "Don't come back." Thatcher whined. "Biam, you're so mean." She quickly took Nobel's hand and they walked away. She turned back. "Bye," he thought. "Fine. Just go." Then he quickly put his head back down on the table, thinking, "I'm so sleepy." Seeing him like that, Lewis quickly turned back, about to call out, "Dramatic music." Suddenly, Nobel turned around as if to look at him. Her eyes flickered towards something behind her, a hint of longing in them. She pictured a romantic scene, where she was gazing at him affectionately, and he was the only one who knew. Nobel glanced forward again. But finally, she turned away resolutely. Through the window, she could see Vichel standing there. A thought crossed her mind. I didn't think it would come to this. Vituril and Avon were walking back to class together. Vituril continued her thought. Although his demeanor is so cold, those thoughts echoed in his deep, dark eyes. I sensed something indefinable. The image of Kim flashed in her mind again. She thought, it felt like my throat was closing up. She stroked her chin smugly. How terrifying. Rachel thought, he's completely different from the other classmates or the chatterboxes I've met since starting school. A wave of emotions crossed their faces. She thought she was just here to play around. But unexpectedly, she stumbled upon a lucrative opportunity. For generations, her family, the esteemed merchant saints, had betrothed their daughters to exceptional warriors. This meant she licked her lips, her eyes gleaming. He was the talent her family craved. Rachel glanced at Avon walking beside her, and thought, as expected, the untouchable queen was very interested in him. Suddenly, she spun around and said to Avon, "Sorry, Avon." She put a hand on her head, feigning helplessness. "You should apologize to your classmates. You caused quite a scene just now." Her voice was loud. "That's not it." Seeing her denial, Nobel lowered his hand. "Go on." Then Angel folded her arms and declared boldly, "Gangjuma, I won't concede." This made Nobel freeze. Images of spinning legs flashed before his eyes. It was still working. The words, "die, die, die, die," echoed in Block's mind. He was still filled with rage. The veins in his face bulged. The black mask only served to conceal his cruel visage. He believed his body, the body of the genius auditor, had lived a lifetime without ever tasting defeat. He wondered if the night would be any different. He stormed forward, lost in thought. Should he launch a surprise attack? A night raid? Kim's image flashed in his mind again. He broke out in a cold sweat and frowned. Consumed by hatred, the mere thought of him, he lunged forward, shoving another patient aside and yelling, "Get out of my way!" He walked briskly, one hand still gripping the four-pole beside him. "I need to mobilize the auditor family's resources. It's the only way I can crush that wretched Teo. I have to kill that bastard and bring Glowy back." An image of Glowy appears in his mind. He realizes that Glowy's potential is even greater than his own. He approaches his hospital room, preparing to open the door. "Yes, I have to do it now. My family's power and my unparalleled nighttime skills." He peeks his face through the slightly open door. He's still certain that, but suddenly he sees it. Something makes him freeze the moment he lays eyes on it. Someone is munching on an apple. Walking into the middle of the room, he hears Kim speak first. "Ah, it's you, Lewis." He plops down on a chair. One hand goes to his mouth. The other still clutches a box cutter. Observing from afar, Kim thinks he looks furious, but he pulled out first. She was consumed by anger. Her eyes gleamed as she stammered and moaned. "Feels so good, huh? Yuma's into it too." A voice called out "Chloe" from somewhere. Startled, she looked up and asked, "Really?" Removing Yuma's hand from her mouth, she asked, "What is it, Yuma? What's wrong?" He stood before her, but she still urged, "Put the knife down." He scratched his head and asked, "How's Block doing?" Lewis hesitated. She lowered her head for a moment. Then, looking up, she said, "He's in the Academy Hospital." He asked in surprise, "Why is he hospitalized?" She replied, "He wasn't injured during the subspace battle. Actually, I'm still not sure what happened." She continued, "I just heard he was admitted to the hospital, even though he doesn't have any external injuries, so everything will be alright." Lewis's voice still echoed, "Yamaha, you don't need to worry." He lowered his head in thought. "Even though I cut him in half, he's not weak enough to lose his spirit. That bastard, could he be planning something else?" Lost in thought, he rubbed Close's head. He asked Close, "Can you tell me Block's room number?" He pondered the first step to deal with Eander, stroking Close's head. This made her blush as she asked back, "Me?" Back to the fateful meeting of Block and Kim. He yelled, "Lucky you." He gave him a quick, cold glare. Holding up the apple, he asked, "Can I eat this?" Seeing him ask, he thought, "You already ate it, what's left?" He continued, "Auditors must be very rich, right? A special room for one person? You can't be serious." Block could only stand there dumbfounded. He finally spoke. "How did you get here?" As soon as he finished speaking, Kim turned towards the knife resting on the counter. He briefly considered picking it up. Seeing this, Block stared wide-eyed and thought, could he be here to finish things? A long, slender knife lay sharp and gleaming in Kim's palm. Turned out Block was wrong. Kim simply wanted to use the knife to peel an apple. The stunned Block. The peeled apple looked perfect. Each strip of peel separated evenly, forming a long continuous ribbon. Even Block had to admire Kim's skill. Why did he cut the top off like that? Kim gently placed the freshly peeled apple on the table, next to a basket of other fruits. Then he walked past. Block spoke softly, as if giving a warning. "If you're tired of rice, have some fruit." A strange gesture that surprised him. The patient had a knife hidden up his sleeve. He glanced up. Thoughts of hatred swirled in Nock's mind. "You bastard, you dare pity this body? I'll kill you." As Kim was leaving the patient's room, he let out a small ah. He continued walking, then said, "If you're planning on getting revenge on me." Nock peeked out, eager to hear what Kim would say next, only to hear him declare, "I will destroy Auditor." With cold eyes and an emotionless face, he successfully intimidated Nock. He was both terrified and surprised, unsure of what to do. Suddenly, something flew with great force and smashed against the wall. The apple now had several cuts on it. And then the apple began to bleed. Seeing this, he stumbled backward, completely taken by surprise. His own footsteps continued their steady rhythm on the ground. Hands shoved in his pockets, he walked, lost in thought. After all, the enemy's presence was as fragile as a matchstick. His heart was probably completely shattered, which is why his intimidation tactic worked. He remembered staring at his crush with a death glare, scaring himself half to death in the process. And he figured that auditors were the most deadly assassins in the world. There was no way to deal with all of them in just 30 seconds. He slowly looked up, thoughts still racing. Maybe he could hold his own against 10 of them for 30 seconds. It was a worst-case scenario anyway. He had to minimize the killing as much as possible. He lifted his head. The moon shone silently in the sky. He kept thinking. Felt like he was standing before a terrifying storm. He remembered every moment that had just transpired, from the fight with Beak, to the fiery clash between Jet and Glowy, Avon's face, and finally, Beak's surprised expression. He wondered if he had mastered it yet. Then he blurted out, "I wonder what's going to happen to my head." The moon continued to shine amidst the dark night. He knew that, with Nox, I can stop worrying about him. The problem is, he muttered to himself, the person I want to avoid the most, and the image of a Daicho noose appeared. I don't want anything to do with him, he continued to think. Even in the game, his character approaches the male lead first, but attacks later than the female lead. Amen. Kim slowly pulled out his phone. We'll talk about that later. It's time to prepare for the midterm exam. Q stared intently at his illuminated phone screen, thinking, the reward is substantial, so I need a solid plan. Murasame, I need a weapon that can last for more than 30 seconds. He was actually looking at his calendar. He recalled the exam details. No class distinctions. 5 people cooperate to subdue a monster. In team battles, individual skill is crucial, but trust between teammates is even more important. Although the team members might be difficult, but if they cooperate well, he pictured them all together, riding on a bus, with different levels, Their voices filled the air. It's funny how things stay the same. His thoughts continued. We can ride the bus together. And the monster we need to eliminate in this test is the deep-sea Yasu octopus. He pictured a fish with human-like limbs appearing. In his mind, the scene kept replaying. They were charging forward and attacking him. He exclaimed, it was already annoying in the game, but to fight it in real life, he felt like he was about to vomit. He thought, even though I've been catching fish my whole life, if it were a mermaid, that would be the image of a breathtakingly beautiful mermaid, gracefully swimming, peered. Am I nosebleeding? He wondered. Jim continued walking, thinking, wait, the mermaid is the main. He sat down on a bench, lowering his head in thought. The key figure of the demon race, compared to the powerful main character, Yasuo is just a guard dog. Fortunately, his only goal is to conquer the Mumermet beast. No need to deal with the main character. He says it's been over a month since he arrived here. The night is truly peaceful. He looks up again and says, peaceful. Layers of waves appear on the ocean surface. A blue light flashes. It's been 700 years since humans and demons signed a truce. In this world, there have been many conflicts, big and small. A prime example is a purple face that appears. It's Batman. Half a century ago, they said they would revive the commander of the 1st Legion, who is currently sealed. The commander of the 6th Legion crossed the ceasefire line himself. Long strands intertwine with each other. A powerful fist tears through the first barrier. A scream rings out, Lord Lycan. Chaos erupts. Debris flies, sending everyone into a panic. Screams continue to echo. I will bring you back. Those below look up and shout, John Doe. A figure holding a knife appears in the gap. Humanity. Those known as the strongest of all, the heroes of the 7-Star Heroes organization, have won. After a week of bloody battle, blood gushes from someone's leg. In exchange for victory, 3 have sacrificed their lives. An eye opens. One eye is obscured by blood. Fortunately, no one else dared to cross that line. A figure dressed in all white sits in a restroom. He picks up his phone and says, the strongest human. And that was just a commander of the 6th Legion. How has this peace continued until today? Kim speaks up. Who knows how much longer this peace will last? Sitting in his chair, staring at his phone, images of him and another giant keep flashing in his mind. He tells himself to think. Come to think of it, Beck Ruoja Queen was the one who sealed the Legion commander. He hums in thought. Wasn't she human? However, a war between demons and humans is coming, including the Demon Kings. His fingers quickly scroll through the calendar on his phone to 2037. Just 3 years away. He glances up, worry clouding his eyes. Worrying is useless now. I need to stay sharp and focus on the midterm exams. The phone screen now switched to chat logs. This is going to be a hassle. But first, I need to make billions. He hesitated. I've been living too quietly. I have no friends, and you're just being complacent. But then again, I'm currently one of the most famous people in the academy. If I take advantage of this, could I make money? Then, Kim focused back on his phone, a determined look on his face. Alright, I can't just live quietly for the next 3 years anyway. I need to join a good group and ace the midterm exams. Perfect. Instead of comfortable and quiet, he chose loud and comfortable. He said, alright, time to change my objective. In a blink of an eye, a week passed. Kim sat in class with a sullen expression. He thought to himself, it's a lie. No one invited me to join anything. He remembered slashing his knife into block, splitting him into pieces. A gasp escaped his lips. This is bad, he thought. He rested his head in his hands, defeated. I have no self-control, he muttered. Are people afraid of me? Suddenly, his gaze shifted to the side. He was looking at Close. She was also alone. Kim thought, is he like me too? From that day forward, Close was also ostracized. He approached her and asked, Louis? She startled and turned around. Juma, he asked, has anyone invited you to a group yet? Louis replied, no, not yet. He confessed, are you okay? I don't have any friends anyway. She cheerfully replied, I'm fine, if I could. Yuma, she started to say, but he interrupted, you and I, let's form a team. We need 3 more people. She agreed without hesitation, while thoughts of her kept running through his mind. Louis is definitely the one I need. The goal is to catch as many dream eaters as possible within 1 hour. If we can catch one every 30 seconds, that's about 1,000. Seems like she likes the idea. Lewis keeps exclaiming, "This is so much fun." Seeing him so happy makes him happy too. What a joy. Suddenly, a loud bang startles him. He hears the name, Yuma. But the person calling his name is Jadel. She's running towards him casually. "I came to visit," she says. He visibly flinches. "Why are you here again?" he asks. She replies sweetly, "I just came to hang out." The sudden appearance of Dato Kurosu sent a shiver down her spine. She whispered, he's here," realizing the implications. Kim bit her lip, falling silent. Sensing something was wrong, he quickly stood up and said, "You should go. I don't have time for you today." Batoru feigned distress, wiping away fake tears and whining, "You're so mean, Yamato." "Hey, I need to remind you, stop calling me Yamato, okay?" She flailed, protesting, I don't know. I can't hear you. I can't hear you." She edged closer to Kim's desk, pretending to trip, then exclaimed, "I can't hear you. I fell." Baekcheol looked up and asked him, "Oh, by the way, how did Yamato's test go?" "He probably didn't even listen to me." His voice was barely a whisper. She gasped dramatically, "Oh, that's great. Baekcheol is so inviting. You should join my group then." Kim frowned, hearing someone say, "That's wonderful." Batoru chimed in, "So join us." She lifted Kim's chin with her hand and said, "Join my group." Kim brushed Vacher's hand away. "Why me? Even without me, there are plenty of others lining up to join your group." Vacher leaned in on the table, looking at Kim. "They're not interesting at all. I don't know why. But I have a feeling that, if I'm in a group with you, something fun will happen." Kim nodded towards Close standing behind them. "I've already decided to team up with Close." Vacher seemed indifferent. She held up 2 fingers. "No problem. My group still has 2 spots left." Kim paused. "With this team, forget about the prize. Even my own score is at risk. They say hate the sin, not the sinner." She glanced briefly at Lewis behind her. Lewis gave a slight nod. Kim turned back to Vacher. "Well then, I'll rely on you." Cavatina quickly took out her phone and tapped a few times. She replied, "Okay, no changing your mind." Jim looked at her, "But who's leading the group?" Cavatina shrugged. "Leon. You know who that is, right? He's super famous." Hearing the answer, Jim nearly froze. Holy crap, what have I gotten myself into? After everyone left, Jim sat alone in the same spot, his body trembling slightly. He gritted his teeth. Did I commit some heinous crime in a past life or something? For the past 35 years, I haven't done anything but tailoring. He recalled Aben and Jeetel. I already avoided them, but somehow, I always get involved with heroines. It's just that I'm too outstanding, and I guess I fit their type. Jim paused for a moment. But, in the end, it happened anyway. Jim seemed to see a halo radiating from Leon. Leon Van Vin Hart, that's a whole different story. The main character of this game. Jim thought nervously. I don't know which way the future will go. Will the responsibility fall on my shoulders? It's like I can see myself being tied down by Jadel again. I can't even change teams. That crazy which put my name down for the team and submitted the application before even asking me. It's like Vacher is smiling and reaching out to grab Tiny Kim, saying, I won't let you go anywhere. Kim clenched her fist so damn tight. Never before have I ever wanted to hit a woman so badly. Just now. Chloe suddenly stepped forward, tilted her head, and asked Kim, Yamaha, did something bad happen? Nam smiled and said, just now, when, no, ever since that blonde girl left.